Chapter 1. The Fifth High School of the Immortal Sect. Name Chen Mobai. Age 18. Realm level, Kai refining level 5. Spiritual roots. Metal 23, wood 27, water 23, fire 17, earth 10. In Danxia City, at the Fifth High School of the Immortal Sect, a handsome young man took out his thin, jade-like phone and opened his personal data interface in a classroom by the window. With the new semester just beginning, the homeroom teacher wanted to check each student's progress during the holidays, so Chen Mobai edited some content that needed updating. Having connected to the teaching network, I was about to send my personal panel to the homeroom teacher when I heard a voice in my ear. Hey, you actually went into seclusion to cultivate during the holidays and broke through to the 5th level of Kai refining. After sending his own panel, his deskmate glanced at Chen Mobai's and saw that he had filled in Kai refining level 5 in the realm column. His tone was slightly sour. Although the information on the personal interface is filled in by the user, the school can easily verify its authenticity through various tests. Basically, no one will fill it in randomly, because if someone is caught falsifying information, it will be recorded in their file, affecting their future admission to higher education or even their job allocation during wartime. Within the immortal sects, the punishment for deception is quite severe. I'm different from you. I have a true spiritual root. As long as I work hard, I can cultivate much faster than your pseudo-spiritual root. Chen Mobai's words carried a hint of pride. Apart from being taken to the temple by his mother to burn incense during the holiday, he spent the rest of his time at home in seclusion, cultivating diligently. Finally, with the help of elixirs, he broke through the bottleneck and advanced to the 5th level of Kai refining. It's so unfair that your spiritual root attribute can be classified as a true spiritual root. My deskmate was furious, but there was nothing he could do. That was the rule of the immortal sect. A spiritual root attribute exceeding 20 is considered to possess that attribute's spiritual root. However, when he was in his mother's womb, the heavens didn't pay attention to the distribution of his talents, resulting in a slightly more even distribution of 4 attributes, thus classifying him as a pseudo-spiritual root. But in reality, his deskmate's spiritual root attribute points were not much different from Chen Mobai's. They were practically equal. Yes, not bad. Many people have made progress during the holiday. At this moment, the homeroom teacher on the podium had finished looking at everyone's panels, and a rare smile appeared on his usually serious face. Then, each student who made progress was specifically praised. Chen Mobai was one of them. The homeroom teacher's praise made the 2 beautiful girls in front of him turn around, and made Chen Mobai unable to help but puff out his chest with a smug look on his face. At the 5th level of Kai refining, one could be considered among the top 20 in the entire class. He's now a senior in high school. If he works hard, he might be able to advance to the next level before the Immortal Sects College entrance exam. If you reach the 6th level of Kai refining, you have no hope of getting into the 4 top-tier Dao Academy, but you can still hope for the 2nd-tier Dao Academy. As for the 3rd-tier Dao Academy, such as the local Danju and Chixia academies, you are almost certain to get in. As long as one can enter the Dao Academy after the college entrance examination, one will not be conscripted by the immortal sects to participate in the war of opening up for 10 years. Perhaps there is hope that we can establish a foundation. Finally, I would like to give special praise to Song Zheng and Yan Bingxuan. I never thought that I would be able to train 2 students in the late stage of Kai refining in my lifetime. Chai Dayan had just become a homeroom teacher 6 years ago, and this class was the first one he had taught in his entire term, a time when his emotions were at their strongest. With a look of emotion, he put down his tablet, his usually serious gaze suddenly softening, and looked at the boy and girl who had stood up, along with everyone else in the classroom. These are 2 top students in their class, and also the most outstanding students with the best spiritual roots. As expected, they lived up to expectations and entered the 7th level of Kai refining before the college entrance examination. With such results, one is basically guaranteed entry into a level 2 Dao Academy and can attempt to reach foundation establishment within 10 years. If successful, one will become a golden core Dao seed, and even within the immortal sect, one will be a key figure to be cultivated. Chen Mobai was also filled with envy. Unlike his borderline true spiritual root, Song Zheng and Yan Bingxuan had true spiritual roots, one of which had a spiritual root attribute exceeding 40, making it twice as effective to cultivate techniques of that attribute. Alright, that concludes today's lesson. Upon hearing the bell ringing from the school's tallest building, Chai Dae-yun, after compiling the collected test papers, announced the end of get out of class. All the students immediately scattered. Even Chen Mobai, after grabbing only his phone, jumped out of the window next to him and headed straight for the training room. Fortunately, after his holiday seclusion, his cultivation level improved by 1 level, and his leaping technique became 3 times faster, allowing him to arrive at the training ground before most people. He didn't have time to choose. He saw an empty cultivation room with the door open and rushed in. A beep sound. Chen Mobai swiped his electronic student card on his phone, and the word empty on the electronic screen at the entrance of the training room disappeared instantly. Then the door slowly closed. Damn it! Outside the door, a student who was a step too slow cursed and rushed toward another empty training room. No wonder they were in such a hurry. It's simply because spiritual energy is so hard to come by. After 6,000 years of development by the immortal sects, the resources of Earth Star are almost exhausted. All the spiritual energy in the territories occupied by the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands has been taken over by the state. The spiritual energy flowing between heaven and earth is at most enough to allow cultivators to maintain basic breathing. If a cultivator wants to absorb spiritual energy for cultivation, they must pay a merit fee to the immortal sect. The earth vein spiritual energy of the first tier low grade is transported to the dwelling, and 10 merit points are required per month. Chen Mobai is at the 5th level of Kai refining, and the first grade low-level spiritual energy is no longer of much use to him. A mid-grade first-tier spiritual energy requires 20 merit points per month. The cost of obtaining a first-grade superior spiritual energy is already 40 points of monthly merit. For Chen Mobai, the amount of spiritual energy at the mid-grade level 1 was only enough to stabilize his cultivation and allow him to make barely any progress. If he wanted to improve rapidly, it would be best to aim for the high-grade level 1. Of course, if there is 2nd or even 3rd-tier earth vein spiritual energy, that would be even better. But this is just wishful thinking. Only families of foundation establishment cultivators, or companies, can apply to the immortal sect to use 2nd-tier spiritual veins. Sensing that the concentration of spiritual energy in the cultivation room, which was about 3 square meters in size, had begun to rise, Chen Mobai opened the software on his phone to test the spiritual energy level. After waiting for almost a minute, the value on the screen finally stopped changing. Spiritual energy value, 10. The quality of the Earth's spiritual energy can be measured using spiritual energy values. According to the rules of the immortal sect, a spiritual energy value of 1-10 is considered a first-order spiritual vein. A spiritual energy value of 10-100 indicates a 2nd-tier spiritual vein. A spiritual energy value of 100-1000 indicates a 3rd-tier spiritual vein. By the same token, the highest ranking place in the entire immortal sect is said to be the cave heaven, where the 2 nascent soul ancestors reside, which is a 6th-order spiritual vein. End of this chapter. Chapter 2, Tortoiseshell. The school's benefits are really good. We can use the first-grade high-level spiritual energy cultivation room for free for 2 hours every day. Chen Mobai thought about how, during the holiday, in order to help himself break through, his mother gritted her teeth and used her merits to raise the family's earth vein spiritual energy to the first-grade high level. Even so, the spiritual energy value was only 7 and could only occasionally fluctuate to 8 or 9. This 5th high school of the immortal sect is built on a 3rd-grade low-level spiritual vein and has a total of 300 cultivation rooms. After all, these students are the future flowers of the immortal sect, and they can't be allowed to go hungry. There are 300 cultivation rooms, 100 each for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd years of high school, corresponding to the lower, middle, and upper grades of spiritual energy respectively. Senior high school students work the hardest, and the spiritual energy concentration in this cultivation room is already at the top level of the 1st rank. The cultivation room was extremely simple, square in shape, with only a futon on the bluestone floor in the middle. Chen Mobai wasted no time. He put his phone down, turned on the auxiliary cultivation recording mode, sat upright on the futon, and began to refine spiritual energy, because he had just broken through to the 5th level of Kai refining, and it was only with the help of elixirs. His realm was unstable. For the past 2 hours, he hadn't practiced the 5 elements internal energy technique, but had only circulated the most basic Kai nourishing technique. Warm currents flowed through his meridians, and the pale white spiritual energy in the cultivation room, which was almost turning into mist, surged into Chen Mobai's mouth and nose like a long dragon, merging with his increased spiritual power and slowly blending together to transform into his true power. He was immediately captivated by the feeling, unable to extricate himself. Time passed slowly. A ding sounded. The soul-suppressing incantation in the cultivation room roused Chen Mobai from his cultivation. No matter how reluctant he was, thinking of the classmates who had been waiting in line outside for a long time, he could only pick up his phone and hurriedly walk out of the cultivation room. As soon as he came out, a female classmate behind him rushed in, swiped her card, and closed the door in one smooth motion. Not only him, but the other 99 senior high school students also reluctantly left the training room. Among them was Chen Mobai's deskmate, Lu Hengsheng. "Wow, you're lucky. You managed to snag one of the first batches." After exchanging greetings, I noticed that Lu Hengsheng's eyes were a bit gloomy, and he seemed unhappy. "Do you know what I just saw?" "What?" Chen Mobai knew that Lu Hengsheng couldn't keep things to himself, and after a while, he indeed took the initiative to tell him. "I saw Song Zheng enter the cultivation room of the 2nd-tier spiritual vein." Second-tier spiritual veins aren't those reserved for teachers, who gave their cultivation room to Song Zheng. The school not only has training rooms for students, but also high-end training rooms exclusively for teachers. Apart from the 3rd-tier cultivation room reserved exclusively for the principal, a foundation establishment cultivator, even teachers have to wait in line to get a turn in the other 10 2nd-tier cultivation rooms. The fact that Song Zheng was able to enter the 2nd-level cultivation room means that a teacher had given up his cultivation resources for him. Who else could it be but Old Man Ding? He failed to establish his foundation twice and doesn't have much time left. He's devoted himself to education, and seeing that Song Zheng has a chance to enter one of the 4 major academies, he gave him his share of the 2nd-tier cultivation room. When he said these words, Lu Hengsheng was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. "I wish he were Song Zheng. It's so unfair, and the school isn't doing anything about it." As the two were talking, several classmates nearby overheard them, and one of the boys was indignant. Although there is no true fairness in society, those in higher positions in schools tacitly maintain a semblance of fairness and justice on the surface. The teacher gave up the cultivation resources to the students. Although it was the teacher's share, the true ownership of the cultivation room still belonged to the school. This was unfair to the students. If they complained to the academic affairs office, it would at least cause a stir. "What do you know? I heard that Song Zheng has officially become Teacher Ding's disciple during the holidays and has been registered in the inheritance hall of the Immortal Sects Education Department. They are already addressing each other as master and disciple. When a master gives resources to his disciple, even the academic affairs office can't interfere." A female student, looking displeased, spoke to the male student who was about to report her. "Song Zheng is good-looking and a young genius, so he is quite popular among girls." Chen Mobai was also filled with envy. If he cultivates on a 2nd-tier spiritual vein for a semester, he is confident that he can advance to the 6th level of Kai refining. Students at this level cannot enter the 4 major academies, but they may be able to enter the 2nd-tier academy, and they can easily choose the 3rd-tier academy. He also has a true spiritual root, so why doesn't any teacher take notice of him? It can only be said that even among those with the same true spiritual root, there are differences in quality. "You guys chat, I'm going home. See you tomorrow." Chen Mobai still had ambition, and although he felt it was unfair, he had no intention of getting involved in these disputes. After using up his free time in the school's cultivation room, he rushed home. After all, his mother had spent a lot of money to buy a 1st-grade high-level spiritual vein for half a year, all so that he could get good results in the college entrance examination. "We can't waste it. When I got home, the place was empty. My parents are both working hard to support the family. Especially after we rented the spiritual vein for 6 months, they have been working even more overtime and don't get home until very late every day. Chen Mobai first cooked a pot of spirit rice, and then in his mother's studio, he cut large sheets of yellow paper into standard small talismans, each 12 cm long and 6 cm wide. After the spirit rice was cooked, Chen Mobai had already cut out more than 100 blank talisman papers. He counted out 12 sheets per dozen, stacked them one by one, and then tied them together with a special kind of magic rope. The 6 dozen sheets were arranged in 2 stacks and placed into the packaging box. The cost of this large talisman paper is 1 merit point. After cutting and packaging, it can be sold for 2 merit points. After conversion, it is roughly 1 merit point of labor cost per box. To supplement his family's income, Chen Mobai would do some work that he could manage. I neatly arranged the 2 boxes of packaged talismans on the table, and added the 8 boxes I had cut earlier to make a total of 10, filling the entire table. He took out his phone and took more than a dozen photos from different angles, then selected a few of the better ones and uploaded them to the official online trading market set up by the Immortal sect. Normally, people will make offers one after another within a week, and Chen Mobai will choose the one with the highest offer to sell. Because he couldn't afford the teleportation fees, he limited all his transactions to face-to-face trade in Dangxia City. The city has a well-developed transportation system, and he can ride for free with his student card. After finishing the plump, jade-like spirit rice, Chen Mobai used a cleaning spell to clean up the pots and pans before entering his bedroom. Although a cultivation room was specially set up at the entrance of the underground vein that transmits spiritual energy, Chen Mobai still preferred to practice his Kai in his own room. After all, as long as the door to the cultivation room is open, the first-grade high-level spiritual energy will spread to every room in the entire house. Even if the windows are open, the overall spirit sealing restrictions of the house will firmly lock the earth vein spiritual energy within the room, so there is no need to worry about wasting it. Of course, precisely because of this, the scope has expanded, and the concentration of spiritual energy in the house is not as high as in the school's training room. But Chen Mobai was already very satisfied. He resisted the urge to scroll through his phone and watch the live stream, trying not to think about the dancing and singing fairies. He calmed his mind, sat cross-legged on his bed, and prepared to cultivate. Suddenly, he noticed the tortoise shell on his bedside table. My mom is really something. Why did she bring this unlucky thing over? End of this chapter. Chapter 3, Water Mansion. When Chen Mobai saw the tortoise shell, he felt a slight pain in the healed wound on his right hand again. Here's what happened. Half a month ago, he had just broken through to the 5th level of Kai refining. His superstitious mother was so happy that, in order to help him get good results in the college entrance examination, she took him back to their hometown in the deep mountains to burn incense at a temple that was said to be very effective. Then some damned person pushed him from behind while he was offering incense. He staggered and, to steady himself, reached out and grabbed a tortoise shell that had been placed in front of the statue. As a result, the tortoise shell had been stained by smoke for many years and was not very clean. Chen Mobai's right hand was cut by the sharp shell, which caused an infection. He was so weak that he could not even stand up and had to go to the hospital to lie in bed for half a month. Because her precious son was hospitalized, the mother was naturally unwilling to let the matter rest. She had a good argument with the abbot of the temple in her hometown, hoping to get back the 188 merit points from the first incense offering. But the old monk was no pushover, or perhaps the temple was simply too poor. No matter what Chen Mobai's mother said, he refused to give up his money and only compensated her with 2 talismans. Faced with a worthy opponent, and ultimately finding himself in the wrong, the old cultivator yielded a step. The indignant Chen Mobai's mother took the tortoise shell away, saying she wanted to burn it to ward off bad luck for her son. As a result, the tortoise shell hasn't burned yet. Fires are prohibited in the city. All unused and discarded resources must be recycled and processed using special methods before being buried by geomancers into the Earth's spiritual core to maintain the generation and circulation of the Earth's spiritual energy. Only companies and organizations within the city that have been granted licenses for alchemy and weapon crafting are permitted to start fires. Chen Mobai rolled his eyes, got up, and prepared to throw the tortoise shell into the trash can, hoping that the geomancer would bury this unlucky thing tomorrow. But just as his hand touched the tortoise shell, a flash of silver light streaked past. Caught off guard, Chen Mobai was enveloped in a silvery light and then disappeared from the room. I don't know how much time has passed. Chen Mobai regained consciousness and slowly got up. After looking around, I realized that I was no longer in my own room, but in a mysterious cave. The location of this cave is unknown, but Chen Mobai is certain of one thing. He is underwater now. Looking up, all I saw was a vast expanse of blue. The entire cave was surrounded by a thin, semi-elliptical spherical light shield. Fish and crabs from all directions in the water bumped into the light shield and were bounced away as if they had hit rubber. Chen Mobai waited for nearly 10 minutes, but no senior expert appeared. He slowly turned around to check. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered to be a small underwater cave. The place where he is standing now should be the front hall of the cave. There is a base in each of the 4 corners, and a formation flag is stuck on each of them. Together with the formation flag on the main base in the center of the cave behind him, it forms a simple water-avoiding formation. Fortunately, Chen Mobai had paid attention to array formation classes and was able to identify that this second-tier mid-grade array had no other offensive functions besides gathering spirits, avoiding water, concealing, and protecting. He cautiously tested the formation according to what he had learned at school, and only after about an hour, when he confirmed that it was working correctly, did he finally breathe a sigh of relief. After confirming that the cave was not a place of constant danger, Chen Mobai waited another half-hour before starting to move around. The cave dwelling was indeed very small, with only the front hall which was completely visible, and 3 side halls at the back. The middle side hall should be a cultivation room, but it's unclear if anyone is inside. Chen Mobai took out a wooden armor talisman from his pocket and held it in his palm. This was his life-saving talisman, a mid-grade first-tier weapon. Once activated, it is powerful enough to block attacks from cultivators at the 6th level of Kai refining. With the talisman in hand, I felt a little safer. Chen Mobai took out another coin, placed it on the ground, and gently rolled it toward the side hall door. Sizzle! Just as the coin rolled to the front door, a flash of eerie blue lightning vaporized the jade-like coin into a cloud of spiritual mist. Seeing this, Chen Mobai felt heartbroken. This 1 yuan coin is worth the equivalent of a good deed. It is made by crushing dried spirit stones and mixing them with other jade, minerals, and metals. It is infused with a point of spiritual energy and a talisman for anti-counterfeiting purposes. It is the basic unit of currency of the Earth Star. Chen Mobai only had 5 yuan of pocket money a week. He worked hard to earn money by cutting talisman paper, which earned him 80 points of merit as a private stash. He hesitated because he was now missing a coin. After waiting for a while, the central side hall, whose restriction had been triggered, still remained silent. Chen Mobai couldn't resist any longer. He searched his entire body and realized that only this coin could be used to test the waters. He had no choice but to grit his teeth and roll the coins towards the other 2 side halls on the left and right. Sizzle! Well, the 2 distinctly different sound effects and lighting caused Chen Mobai to widen his eyes in surprise. The restriction on the left side hall door was the same as that on the middle side hall. It triggered a ghostly blue electric light that instantly vaporized the coin. However, the restriction on the right side hall door was completely different. Instead, it manifested a deep blue water ripple, which pushed the coin back like ripples. Chen Mobai turned his body to the side, making way for the coin to roll back. Only after the coin stopped rolling did he take out another coin and strike it precisely to confirm that there was no residual power of the restriction on this coin before putting it away. He approached the door of the right side hall, cautiously probing it several times until he confirmed that the restrictions on the door were harmless before attempting to break them. However, Chen Mobai did not possess any talismans that could break the restrictions, and the cultivation method he practiced was merely the 5 elements internal energy technique taught at the school, used to lay a foundation. I should have taken a picture of that water sword talisman that I've been eyeing for so long. After trying for a long time, Chen Mobai still couldn't break the water ripple restriction placed on the door, and he couldn't help but feel a little regretful. In his shopping cart on the Immortal Gate Network's trading market, there were many items he wanted to buy. Among them was a water sword talisman worth 30 merit points, a mid-grade first-tier talisman, which was perfect for him to use at the 5th level of Kai refining. He sensed the strength of the water wave restriction on the side hall door, and felt it was similar to the wooden armor talisman in his hand. If he were to apply a water sword talisman to it, it should be able to break the restriction. Chen Mobai racked his brains, trying to recall every piece of knowledge, but he was truly at a loss. He could only return to the palace of this water mansion, sit on the central array flag base where he had woken up, and begin to meditate to recover the mana he had consumed while testing the water wave restriction. As soon as he sat down to meditate, he jumped up in surprise, took out his phone from his pocket, and opened an app to test the concentration of spiritual energy. Spiritual energy value, 60. This place is actually a mid-grade second-tier spiritual vein. Chen Mobai was even more terrified. This water mansion was either the villa of a wealthy family or the cave of a cultivator of a higher level than him. If they saw a stranger like him here, they would definitely not give him a friendly look. How did I get here? Oh right, that tortoise shell. Chen Mobai had figured out the key point, but he searched the entire front hall of the water mansion where he could move around, and even turned over the potted plants, but he still couldn't find the tortoise shell. Oh no, how am I going to explain this to my parents? After waiting another hour, Chen Mobai glanced at the time and realized that his parents would be home from get off work soon, so he had no choice but to take the last route. Dial 110. Hopefully, the law enforcement cultivators of the Immortal Sect can locate his phone and rescue him from this watery mansion. New author, new book. Please show your support, vote, and leave comments. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Return to the city. What should you say when you call the police? That you were brought here by the tortoise shell, that you were kidnapped, or that you got lost? Just after Chen Mobai nervously dialed the number of the Immortal Sects Enforcement Department, something shocking happened to him. My phone has no signal. I can't make the call. Even at the bottom of the deep sea, thousands of meters below the surface, the celestial stars of the immortal sects cover the earthly star. Chen Mobai even heard a fifth-order array master proudly say, while watching TV, that even 2,000 years ago, during the war that opened up the world, the immortal cultivators who invaded the abyss could still detect the signal from the Earth origin star and keep communication between each cultivator. Where exactly is he? Chen Mobai looked completely bewildered. He racked his brains for all the knowledge he had, and even touched every safe place in the water palace, tapping on every single brick on the ground. In the end, Chen Mobai could only sit helplessly on the ground of the front hall. There was absolutely no clue as to how they could have left. Just as he was about to resign himself to his fate and begin meditating, a silver light suddenly lit up on his phone screen, attracting his attention. He discovered that an icon for an app he had never downloaded had suddenly appeared on his phone. The icon is a small, dark green turtle. The software name is listed below. Turtle Baby. What is this? Chen Mobai subconsciously moved his finger to the software icon, wanting to uninstall it. He wouldn't allow software he didn't even know about to appear on his phone. Then a red message appeared on the screen saying, "Unable to uninstall." What's going on? This phone is completely out of control. Chen Mobai was so angry that he was about to shut down and restart his computer when a sudden idea flashed into his mind. This turtle treasure, could it be the turtle shell? He quickly clicked on it and opened the software. There were no problems with the operation. It opened smoothly. It's a very simple home page with only 3 function buttons: teleport, return to town, and proxy. Chen Mobai was both surprised and delighted, but still felt a little uneasy. He closed and reopened the turtle treasure software, and after confirming that there were no explanations, he clicked return to city with a trembling finger, based on his own understanding. This process requires 8 seconds of guidance. Please do not be disturbed during this time. Please find a quiet place. Just as he pressed the return to base button, this line of text suddenly appeared on his phone screen. Just as Chen Mobai was pondering what would constitute a disturbance, a flash of silver light suddenly appeared, enveloping him completely. Then, like a spiral, It pierced through the void and carried him away into the water mansion. "You're back already." After the silver light flashed, Chen Mobai found himself standing in the room again, his hand touching the tortoise shell. With a whoosh, he quickly withdrew his hand, then backed onto the bed and pulled out the sword that his father had bought for him when he was a child, which was hanging on the wall. The sword was shiny, but it was a children's style, only 30 centimeters long, a complete showpiece. The room was quiet for about 2 minutes. Chen Mobai stared at the tortoise shell, and just as he was thinking about what to do with it, the sound of the first-floor door opening came from below. "Mom is back." The familiar sound of the door opening and closing told Chen Mobai who had come. Because there was a cultivating sign hanging on Chen Mobai's door, his mother didn't come up to disturb him, but he still heard the familiar muttering voice. "This child, I've told him to practice breathing exercises in the cultivation room at the entrance of the spiritual vein. Why does he still prefer to stay in his room?" Chen Mobai hesitated for a moment, but ultimately did not go downstairs. He gently sheathed the children's demon-subduing sword in his hand, then used his lightness technique to land in front of the tortoise shell and examine it carefully. The next day, Chen Mobai went downstairs listlessly, ate the carefully prepared breakfast while his mother nagged him, and then hurriedly boarded the bus with his school bag on his back. After morning self-study, a simply dressed old man stepped into the classroom on time. "Hello, Teacher Ding." After the students stood up and greeted him, Old Man Ding nodded calmly. "Today, we will continue our explanation of the solidification of defensive formations in magic. The immortal sects teaching materials divide all the content that cultivators need to learn into 4 subjects. These are art of alchemy and artifact array. After these 4 major subjects are further subdivided, there are dozens of courses and majors. For senior high school students, it is necessary to choose one of these subjects as their main subject to lay the foundation for their future studies. This is equivalent to the division of arts and sciences in high school before Earth Star entered the cultivation civilization. However, there are now 4 paths to choose from in the cultivation of immortality. After all, in order to get into those great academies, in addition to the basic score of the college entrance examination and the cultivation level, there is also the last and most crucial one, the academy's own assessment. Chen Mobai and his class all chose practical skills as their main subject. Chen Mobai didn't know why others chose this option, but he chose the practical skills option simply because it was the cheapest. The rest, whether it's alchemy, weaponry, or even formations, require certain resources and merits to practice or even improve. The practical skills, on the other hand, are the simplest and most straightforward. Just one word: practice. Moreover, in the arts and crafts field, one can choose to become a talisman master as an advanced path, which is also a profession with a very promising earning potential among the various arts and crafts of cultivation. Chen Mobai aspired to become a talisman master from a young age. He has a family background. His mother works in a talisman paper production factory. Under her influence, he has gained some experience, which will shorten the time it takes for him to get started and allow him more time to cultivate. Old Man Ding's real name was Ding Jinglu, and he was a cultivator with a certain reputation in Danxia City. He was quite talented when he was young, possessing a true spiritual root with 3 attributes, slightly better than Chen Mobai. His college entrance exam scores were average, barely enough to get him into the local Danju Academy. But he was a man of great perseverance, and after studying diligently at Danju Academy for 20 years, he passed the Ascension examination among the 10 great academies and was exceptionally admitted. But he achieved results too late. Even after entering the Chunyang Academy and reaching the Kai refining perfection stage before the 60-year limit, and obtaining the foundation establishment secret method, he still failed at the last minute. After using up his foundation establishment opportunity at Chunyang Academy, Ding Jinglu endured another 20 years of hardship, once again returning to the Kai refining perfection stage, and with great perseverance, he once again attempted to break through to the foundation establishment realm. Unfortunately, fate was not on his side, and Ding Jinglu still failed. After 2 attempts, all his potential was exhausted, and Ding Jinglu returned to Danxia City, where he was born to become a teacher. Before reaching the foundation establishment stage, he was single-mindedly focused on cultivation. But after returning to his roots, he had extra time to delve into the various arts of immortal cultivation. Among these, Ding Jinglu was extremely proficient in the art of magic because it required no capital. However, his lecturing skills were mediocre, and most people found themselves drowsy while listening to his lectures. Chen Mobai was usually not very serious, but today was different. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Techniques for Enhancing Spiritual Roots. When Ding Jinglu announced the end of Get Out of Class, everyone in the classroom rushed to the training room. Chen Mobai deliberately pretended to be a step behind and missed the first batch. Then, he stomped his feet, sighed, and made an excuse to go to the toilet before turning into the teacher's office. In the immortal sect, classes are held only in the morning, with self-study in the afternoon. After class, students would crowd into the cultivation room, and the teachers were no exception. Apart from veteran cultivators like Ding Jinglu, who had exhausted their potential and were destined to never reach the foundation establishment stage again, the others, such as Chai Dayun, would seize every minute to cultivate outside of teaching. Even so, only Ding Jinglu gave up his spot in the second-tier spiritual energy cultivation room. Chen Mobai originally thought that at this time, only old man Ding should be in the teacher's office. But as soon as he arrived at the door, he discovered that there were already some of his classmates there besides himself. It wasn't Song Zheng, old man Ding's successor, but Yan Bingxuan, another genius in their class who had reached the late stage of Kai refining. Her face was beautiful even without makeup, her long hair cascading down her shoulders, and her tall figure couldn't be hidden by the oversized school uniform. When she saw Chen Mobai standing at the door, she frowned slightly, then bowed slightly to old man Ding and took her leave. Chen Mobai nodded to Yan Bingxuan, who had come out, and after hesitating for a moment, she nodded in response. The two people belong to different circles in the class. Although they are in the same class, they are only nodding acquaintances. However, Chen Mobai still felt that Yan Bingxuan seemed to have a colder personality and temperament this semester compared to last semester. As if to match her name, this genius monk became increasingly indifferent. Chen Mobai, why aren't you waiting in the cultivation room? What brings you here? Old Ding considered himself a rather humorous person, and Chen Mobai, after hearing this, went inside with a forced smile. It's like this, Teacher Ding. My mother hired a tutor to teach me how to use magic in order to get good grades in the college entrance examination. Yesterday, he assigned me homework to break a water-like defensive barrier, but I'm really slow-witted and have no way to do it, so I had to come and ask you for help, Teacher Ding. After Chen Mobai finished speaking, old man Ding had no doubts. After all, the best way to improve one's magical skills is through constant practice. Although the curriculum taught in schools is broad, it is indeed inferior to that of some private monks outside when it comes to certain specific spells and restrictions. Your mom is quite generous. Private trainers aren't cheap. While searching for the origin of the water wave restriction in his spell database based on Chen Mobai's description, old man Ding casually asked a question. My mother has high hopes for me, so I can only do my best. I'll have to trouble you, Teacher Ding. Chen Mobai dared not say much and could only speak vaguely. He then told Ding Jinglu in detail how he had tested the water wave restriction with coins several times in the water mansion. Yes, based on your description, it is very likely that the restriction is solidified from these three spells. After failing to establish his foundation, Ding Jinglu devoted himself to education. He was very attentive to Chen Mobai, who rarely took the initiative to seek his guidance, and selected 3 spells from his own magic database. Water Shield Surging Wave Spell, Scale Wave Technique. I've uploaded the specific spell details and the solution to your profile. Try them out at home. If it still doesn't work, you can write a report and send it to me. Chen Mobai was very grateful when he saw that Ding Jinglu had sent the documents for the 3 spells to his interface. To download the information for these 3 spells from the Immortal Sects spell library, you would need to pay at least 30 merit points. Moreover, without Ding Jinglu, a teacher with profound knowledge of magic, Chen Mobai would have wasted days and nights searching the vast ocean of the internet on his own. The school's benefits are really great. Chen Mobai sighed from the bottom of his heart, explaining why they valued the college entrance examination so much. If one can get into those great academies, not only spells, but even secret techniques for breaking through realms, supernatural powers, and immortal arts can be obtained for free. On Earth, due to the previous mechanical civilization, there was basically no prejudice against knowledge. The mystical techniques passed down through the immortal sects can be obtained free of charge as long as one's cultivation reaches the late nascent soul stage. It is precisely this atmosphere that allows the immortal sect to produce a nascent soul ancestor, even in the resource-depleted realm of Earth origin star. By the way, Teacher Ding, was Yan Bingshuan also here to ask you about magic? Before leaving, Chen Mobai thought about what had just happened and subconsciously asked a question. After entering the late stage of Kai refining, she seems to have decided to transform her dual-attribute true spiritual root of metal and water into an ice spiritual root, and is asking me for advice on purifying and enhancing her spiritual root. Chen Mobai hadn't expected to get an answer, but Ding Jinglu gave it directly, leaving Chen Mobai staring in shock. Can spiritual roots still be transformed and improved? Oh, you haven't reached this level yet, but it doesn't hurt to tell you in advance. Ding Jinglu typed a couple more times on his keyboard, selected a document, and sent it to Chen Mobai. The reason I was able to be admitted to Chunyang Academy was because I had been in seclusion at Danju Academy for 20 years, transforming my spiritual root into the three-yang body, which can be considered a variant of the alien spiritual root. After 20 years of hard work, although my spiritual root has been transformed into a superior grade, I do not have enough time left to break through to the Kai refining perfection stage. You all know the story of the second half of my life. Even with the three-yang body, I failed to establish my foundation twice and exhausted my potential. Chen Mobai glanced through the document about spiritual roots that Ding Jinglu had sent him and learned the reason. Due to the scarcity of resources, the powerful figures of the immortal sects on Earth can only focus on developing spells and cultivation techniques in the hope of improving the overall quality of immortal cultivators. 6,000 years ago, Master Tianbo created the Golden Touch technique, which can enhance the attribute of a metal-type spiritual root. When cultivated to its peak, it can transform an ordinary pseudo-spiritual root below level 20 into a metal-type heavenly spiritual root. To this day, the immortal sects possess more than a dozen secret techniques that can purify and enhance spiritual roots. Even the secret techniques for transforming into ice, lightning, and wind spiritual roots are widely circulated in various academies and schools. The better your spiritual root, the faster you can cultivate. But if you spend time improving your spiritual root, the time you spend practicing Kai will decrease accordingly. I am a negative example. Therefore, the immortal sect has a rule that this kind of content will not be taught in the classroom before university, so as not to distract you. After entering university, each major academy and academy has a secret technique to purify and enhance one's spiritual roots, which is suitable for the major methods to be passed down. However, whether or not to practice it depends on the individual. End of this chapter. Chapter 6, 5 Elements Technique. Chen Mobai checked the time. There was still more than an hour before the first batch of students in the cultivation room finished, so he didn't rush to leave. Instead, he started asking more questions about purifying and improving spiritual roots. Yan Bingshuan's family must have some experts who know that her spiritual root can be transformed into an ice spiritual root through the frost condensation technique. So she has been working towards this goal since the beginning of her cultivation. The method of purifying and enhancing spiritual roots consumes less time and resources when the cultivation level is lower. She is already in the late stage of Kai refining at a young age, and conservatively speaking, she can attempt to break through to foundation establishment 3 times. Therefore, she wants to transform into an ice spirit root before she reaches the Kai refining perfection stage. Once successful, one can enter the Natural Academy, one of the 10 grade academies, without taking an exam. If one goes a step further, one may be able to pass the assessment of the 4 great academies and rise to the top in one step. The 4 great academies were founded by the 5 nascent soul ancestors who pioneered the immortal sect. Every graduating cultivator is a future high-ranking member of the immortal sect. For thousands of years, the success rate of students in the 4 major academies in establishing their foundations has exceeded 80%. For Danxia City, a blessed land on the edge of the immortal realm, the last person to pass the entrance exam for one of the 4 major academies was Yu Tianguang, the crimson-robed immortal, 100 years ago, who has now successfully formed his core. After leaving Old Man Ding's office, Chen Mobai waited for more than 10 minutes before becoming one of the second batch of people to enter the cultivation room. After placing his phone down and activating the auxiliary cultivation recording mode, he entered a meditative state and began circulating his Kai cultivation technique again to refine the spiritual power he had gained from the pills, making it his own. Time passed slowly, and the soul-suppressing curse continued to awaken Chen Mobai. He walked out of the training room, leaving only the third batch of a dozen or so unlucky souls outside. Looking around, he spotted his deskmate Lu Hengsheng and a few classmates he usually got along with. They greeted each other and then went home. Normally, these classmates who get along well can drink some spiritual tea together after school and play some small games to practice their spellcasting. However, all of these recreational activities were canceled after students entered their senior year of high school. The intense pressure of getting into a good school forced Lu Hengsheng, his usually lazy classmate with poor spiritual talent, to start working hard. Before going home, Chen Mobai bought a box of glass beads for practicing spiritual energy circulation at a convenience store on the roadside. After arriving home, while cooking, he cut out some small talismans and logged onto the online trading platform, only to find that only one cultivator from the same city had made a bid. 18 good deeds. It's a bit low, but Chen Mobai would usually agree to the deal anyway, since it's a product from a small personal workshop, and it's definitely cheaper than what you'd find in a regular store. But today he wanted to explore the water palace that the tortoise shell teleported to once again, so he wasn't in a hurry to do business. After eating and washing up, Chen Mobai returned to his room. He took the tortoise shell in his hand and examined it carefully, but just like last night, it was just an ordinary old tortoise shell, covered with traces of smoke and fire, without any spiritual energy. If it weren't for yesterday's miraculous journey, Chen Mobai would never have believed that this thing was actually a spatial artifact. After placing the tortoise shell in the bedside table drawer, Chen Mobai took out his phone and tapped the app called Turtle Treasure. After exploring it all night, he has gained some understanding of this turtle. There are 3 functions. I won't go into detail about return to town, it just means going back to here. Whether this city refers to his own room or the location of the tortoise shell remains to be verified. Another thing closely related to returning to the city, according to Chen Mobai's understanding, is the culprit that sent him to that mysterious water mansion yesterday. There's only one last agent, and we still have no clue what to do. Obviously, the 3 functions cannot be used indefinitely. Only when the virtual buttons for these 3 functions in the software are raised will there be a response when you touch them. Currently, only the teleport button is lit up. Last night Chen Mobai waited until 3 a.m. to discover this and once again used teleportation to go to the water mansion. However, he still gained nothing. But after cultivating in a second-tier spiritual energy field for a night, the side effects of taking the pills had been reduced by 50–60%. Chen Mobai estimated that after 2 or 3 more days of seclusion and cultivation in the water mansion, he would be able to eliminate the hidden dangers of breaking through by taking the pill, and then resume his 5 elements technique to improve his Kai refining realm. It was precisely for this reason that Chen Mobai mustered up his courage to go to the water mansion again, and even try to break the restrictions on the rear hall. This is a mid-grade second-tier spiritual land. In the immortal sects, it would cost 160 merit points per month to rent this level of earth-vein spiritual energy. In other words, for every day Chen Mobai cultivated in the water mansion, he essentially gained 33 merit points for free. It's a pity he works so hard cutting talisman paper, only earning 20 or 30 merit points a month. Thinking about it this way, it's no wonder Chen Mobai looked down on his small online workshop business. Based on the time it took to travel back and forth yesterday, the cooldown time for teleport should be 6 hours, while return to town takes longer, 10 hours. The cooldown time starts from the last use. Chen Mobai mentally calculated the timing of his 2 experiences last night and came to a preliminary conclusion. Half an hour later, exactly 10 hours had passed since he teleported back in the morning, and the return to city button stood out and lit up in his eyes. If you go there once and find that the situation is not good, you can come back immediately. Chen Mobai immediately hung a "Do Not Disturb in Seclusion" sign on his door, then locked the door, took a deep breath, and clicked the raised teleport button on his phone. Select teleportation location 1, unnamed. Chen Mobai clicked yes. Then a flash of silver light appeared, and he seemed to transform into light, disappearing from the room after about 5 or 6 seconds. I looked up, facing the familiar underwater environment. Chen Mobai suppressed his heartfelt joy. Although I don't know where I am, at least I have a secret base of mid-tier second-level quality. He took out the box of glass beads he had prepared beforehand and poured his spiritual energy into them. The originally transparent beads began to emit multicolored light. This was because Chen Mobai's 5 elements technique combined the 5 attributes of spiritual energy. The 5 elements technique is a fundamental method created by an old ancestor of the immortal sect after 1,000 years of painstaking thought. Any cultivator who practices it will automatically transform it into the spiritual power attribute most suitable for themselves. It is equivalent to tailoring a Kai cultivation method for each cultivator, and it is most suitable for their physique and spiritual root. For example, Chen Mobai's spiritual root attributes are metal 23, wood 27, water 23, fire 17, earth 10. Therefore, the spiritual power generated by his cultivation of the 5 elements technique will be 23% metal and 27% wood, perfectly matching his spiritual root attribute. Moreover, these 5 elements of spiritual energy circulate and generate each other, and can also promote the improvement of realm during cultivation. This is the greatest reliance of the immortal sects in enabling all people to cultivate immortality in the resource-poor land of Diyuan Star. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Composite Restrictions. However, the 5 elements technique is not a panacea. For cultivators like Chen Mobai, whose spiritual root attributes are not much different, the 5 elements technique is an unparalleled, profound technique. The spiritual power cultivated not only matches their own physique, but also progresses at a fast pace. However, for those cultivators with superior spiritual roots, it is quite mediocre. For example, cultivators with a heavenly spiritual root only need to cultivate spiritual power of a single attribute. This not only makes their efforts twice as effective and their magical power pure, but also reduces the number of bottlenecks when they break through to a higher realm. Generally speaking, every cultivator is born with 100 points of spiritual root attribute. Within the territory of the immortal sect's blessed land, every cultivator must undergo a meticulous spiritual examination at a top-tier hospital before entering the Kai refining stage to determine their spiritual root attributes. Only after receiving a spiritual root assessment report from the hospital can they be admitted. For example, Chen Mobai, metal 23, wood 27, water 23, fire 17, earth 10. According to the rules of the immortal sect, as long as a certain spiritual root attribute exceeds 20, it means that you possess that attribute's spiritual root. Chen Mobai has 3 spiritual roots, metal, wood, and water, and was barely classified as a true spiritual root. This is also what made his deskmate Lu Hengsheng resentful, because his spiritual roots are metal 8, wood 25, water 23, fire 22, earth 22. In reality, he was almost identical to Chen Mobai, but because his spiritual root attributes were a bit average, the hospital identified him as having 4 attributes pseudo-spiritual root. As for the so-called heavenly spiritual root, it means that the spiritual root point of a certain attribute among the 5 elements exceeds 80. In other words, even a cultivator with a heavenly spiritual root will have spiritual roots of the other 4 attributes within their body, but they are extremely rare. As for a perfect celestial spiritual root with a theoretical value of 100 attribute points, there has never been a record of it in the thousands of years of the immortal sects. The spiritual power cultivated through the 5 elements technique will adapt to and match the spiritual root attributes of each cultivator. Even for cultivators with heavenly spiritual roots, the spiritual power they cultivate will be mixed with some of the other 4 elements, as if there are some unnecessary impurities. The same principle applies to other cultivators with different spiritual roots. However, none of this mattered to Chen Mobai. He activated the 5 elements technique taught at the school, infusing his 5 elements spiritual power into the glass bead, causing the bead to display a rainbow of light, as if a sun halo were floating up from his palm. These glass beads are a small toy for training the control of spiritual power. One can control 1 bead at the 1st level of Kai refining. With Chen Mobai's current strength at the 5th level of Kai refining, he should be able to control 5 beads at the same time, making them float up and do whatever he wants. However, he has only just entered the 5th level of Kai refining, and his realm is not yet stable, so he will not try to be brave. Following the information provided by Old Man Ding, he piloted the 4 glass panes to fly towards the right side hall. With a whoosh, a ripple appeared, deflecting the 1st glass bead that arrived. Then a 2nd ripple appeared, and a 3rd deflected all the glass beads that flew in afterward. Chen Mobai held his phone, looking at the descriptions of the 3 spells given by Old Man Ding, his face full of worry. He discovered that the water ripple restriction in this side hall actually possessed the characteristics of a flowing water shield, a surging wave spell, and a scale wave technique all at the same time. At his current level, to break such a complex restriction, he would have to use a powerful talisman, or he would have to wait until he broke through to the late stage of Kai refining before he could try again. Forget it, let's focus on cultivation first. We'll have plenty of time to explore this water mansion later. Finally, Chen Mobai checked the time and decided not to waste this mid-grade 2nd-tier spiritual land. He sat upright in the center of the front hall and began to meditate and cultivate. He sent his parents a text message in advance today, saying that he was going to stay in his room and not to be disturbed. The pure water-based spiritual energy transformed into blue light particles, which were refined by the 5 elements technique. After the 5 elements circulated and generated each other, they transformed into spiritual power that was most suitable for Chen Mobai's spiritual root and physique. It slowly circulated throughout his body, nourishing the meridians and acupoints that had been forcibly broken open due to the consumption of pills. Although resources are scarce in the immortal sect, thanks to thousands of years of development and the resources plundered through war, the variety of spiritual herbs is basically complete. Moreover, they are cultivated well according to the local conditions of the blessed lands and grottos. Alchemy, as one of the 4 major disciplines of the immortal sect, is combined with medicine, which allows for the perfect utilization of the properties of medicinal materials. It is also the foundation upon which the immortal sect can support 300 million cultivators with only a single earthly star. They have pills with almost all attributes from various immortal sects. However, there is one type of elixir that is rarely refined, the foundation establishment pill. Although the immortal sects also possess these ancient elixir formulas, they were forbidden from refining them 5,000 years ago. It wasn't that the elixirs were problematic, but rather that they were too wasteful. Foundation Establishment Pill is a low-grade 3rd-tier spiritual medicine, while the main ingredient for refining Foundation Establishment Pill, Jade Marrow Golden Fungus, is a high-grade 3rd-tier medicine. Using it to refine Foundation Establishment Pill is a terrible waste. Furthermore, Jade Marrow Golden Fungus can be used to refine an elixir called Golden Liquid Jade Returning Pill, which can be used to assist Foundation Establishment cultivators in forming their golden core. If the immortal sect has abundant resources, and Jade Marrow and Golden Fungus are planted one after another in the medicine garden waiting to be harvested, then it is not impossible to use a small amount to refine Foundation Building Pills while refining Golden Liquid Jade Restoration Pills. The problem is that the immortal sect has limited resources. Although the variety of spiritual herbs is complete, there are only 2 grotto heavens where the Jade Marrow Golden Fungus can be cultivated. It is not enough to refine the Golden Liquid Jade Return Pill, so why would it be wasted on refining the Foundation Establishment Pill? Although the lower-level cultivators disagreed with this rule of the immortal sect, the biggest difference between the immortal cultivation civilization and the mechanical civilization is that the upper echelons decide everything. The value of a golden core cultivator exceeds that of 10 foundation establishment cultivators. Given the same jade marrow golden fungus, should one refine it into a golden liquid jade return pill or a foundation establishment pill? The answer is obvious. This is why, for cultivators of the immortal sects, the hurdle of foundation establishment is as difficult as ascending to heaven. In ancient times, at least there were foundation establishment pills to look forward to. But now, 99% of cultivators can only rely on their own efforts to break through. That is why cultivators from the immortal sects all want to enter the Great Tao Academy. Although the Great Tao Academy does not refine foundation establishment pills, it can refine secondary spiritual medicines to aid in foundation establishment. It also has many secret techniques to increase the success rate of foundation establishment, not to mention the tens of thousands of foundation establishment experience points. You can always find one that matches your needs. The purple fire pill that Chen Mobai used to break through to the 5th level of Kai refining was a pill refined by the Chixia Academy in Dangxia City, with only 100 pills released each month. Chen Mobai was able to secure the purchase qualification because he had made contact with a senior student from Chixia Academy when he was selling talisman paper. The senior student happened to be working part-time as a customer service representative at Chixia Academy's online flagship store, and the senior student manipulated the system internally. Each type of elixir requires corresponding instructions for use and a guarantee of authenticity. In ancient times, many cultivators in the immortal sect suffered terribly from consuming elixirs indiscriminately. Nowadays, unless it's produced by a reputable pharmacy, no cultivator would dare to consume pills without instructions, an alchemist's signature, or a certificate of conformity. End of this chapter. Chapter 8: Green Arrow Talisman. The immortal sect inherited many systems from the previous civilization on Earth origin star. For example, any elixir that enters the market must specify all the ingredients contained in the elixir on the packaging. In other words, the formula for each type of elixir sold must be included as an appendix. However, if one wants to refine the finished product by relying on the recipe appended to the pill instructions, that is basically a pipe dream. The combination of modern pharmaceutical technology and alchemy is so complex that it could be discussed for 3 days and 3 nights. Therefore, although the formulas for elixirs are public knowledge, alchemy and pharmaceutical production remain a monopolistic industry. However, each university and academy needs to spend huge resources to develop a new elixir, so it's no wonder they make money. Otherwise, with subsidies from the immortal sects alone, no one would be willing to invest in the pharmaceutical industry. The purple fire pill from Crimson Cloud Academy is a pill specifically designed for those breaking through to the mid-stage of Kai refining. Among these, the success rate of breaking through from the 4th level of Kai refining to the 5th level by taking the purple fire pill is the highest, at about 60% to 70%. However, the success rate of breaking through from the 5th level of Kai refining to the 6th level is cut in half, to only 20% to 30%. Moreover, if a cultivator with a predominance of water elemental roots takes the medicine, the effect will be reduced by half. However, if a cultivator with a predominance of wood or fire elemental roots takes the medicine, the success rate will be increased by another 10%. Even so, the purple fire pill is still the most popular among pills of the same level. Because of its mild medicinal properties, the Crimson Cloud Academy has refined the craft of refining the purple fire pill for hundreds of years, achieving a perfect state of being free of toxicity. After taking it, you only need to nourish it with the Kai cultivation techniques of the common people of the immortal sect for 10 to 15 days to resolve the aftereffects of the forced breakthrough. Chen Mobai was very lucky because the purple fire pill uses the purple sunflower, unique to Dangxia City, as its main ingredient, which contains a trace of yang fire and purple energy. It can be twice as effective if it is nourished and neutralized with water spirit. This water palace is built on a mid-grade second-tier water-based spiritual vein, where the water spiritual energy is most abundant. 2 days later, Chen Mobai opened his eyes with a look of surprise, feeling the spiritual energy within his body moving as freely as his own limbs, without any hindrance. He confirmed that his Kai refining level 5 realm had been completely stabilized. It took even less time than he expected, which only shows that he underestimated the second-tier mid-grade water vein spiritual energy. However, this cannot be blamed on him. After all, he is a child from an ordinary family and has never cultivated in a spiritual land of the water mansion level before. I took out the box of glass beads I had bought before. 1, 2, 3. Until the fifth one emitted a colorful light and slowly flew up from his palm. Chen Mobai revealed a happy smile. He might actually be able to cultivate to the 6th level of Kai refining before the college entrance examination. I got up and stretched. Chen Mobai began to examine the water mansion once again. It remains the same as always, without any change. These past 2 days, he has consulted old man Ding again, using the excuse that his private tutor saw his rapid progress and increased the difficulty of the lessons, posing this major problem of the complex restriction. Old man Ding thought that his teaching of Chen Mobai had been very useful, and he was very pleased. After asking more carefully about the characteristics of the composite restriction, he combined his teaching experience and gave 2 more ways to break it. The first method is similar to what Chen Mobai thought. Use a powerful barrier-breaking talisman to strike the weakest point of the barrier and break it by force. The second method is to use skill to overcome skill. Although the composite restriction is powerful, it is a combination of multiple spells, which are interlocked and very precise. If only one of them is broken, the others will be blocked because one of the spells will disappear. If the person who set up the barrier is of average skill, the barrier might even collapse automatically due to the conflict between the remaining spells caused by the breaking of one of the spells. Old Ding was also quite proud, and he gave Chen Mobai a second solution. A forbidden magical artifact is needed to sever the spiritual energy supply from the water palace's spiritual veins. Once the complex restrictions are revealed, they can be broken one by one using the corresponding methods. However, Chen Mobai was penniless, and his only magical artifact was a children's version of the demon-subduing sword hanging in his room. Because it was enchanted with a light spell, it could barely be considered a low-grade, first-tier decorative magical artifact. I checked the online trading market for immortal sects and found that the cheapest magic weapon that meets the requirements costs 500 merit points. We can only switch to the first solution. Chen Mobai took out 3 talismans with blue arrows engraved on them from his pocket, looking pained. This is a mid-grade, first-tier azure arrow talisman, worth 35 merit points per talisman. After consulting with old man Ding for 2 days, Chen Mobai learned that the best way to deal with unfamiliar water attribute restrictions was to use wood attribute spells or talismans to break them. Using fire to attack water is naturally the most effective method. However, if the hidden power of the water attribute restriction far exceeds the initial estimate, the violent reaction of the water and fire spiritual forces will affect the one who breaks the restriction, and they may die on the spot if they are not careful. Wood also counters water, and its stimulation of water attribute spiritual power is not as intense as that of fire attribute spiritual power. Even if the power of the restriction is extraordinary, the aftershocks will not be too severe. The power of this azure arrow talisman is not much different from the water sword talisman that Chen Mobai had previously set his sights on and placed in his shopping cart. After the water sword talisman is cast, it will condense into a transparent, flowing water sword that can gather and disperse at will and flow freely, lasting for up to 15 minutes. Once the azure arrow talisman is released, it will condense into azure arrows based on the caster's cultivation level, and up to 6 arrows can be released at once. Chen Mobai is at the 5th level of Kai refining. After using this technique, 5 long arrows will appear. Although it's a bit of a waste, there's no other way. This is the most suitable talisman for breaking the seal. In order to accomplish the goal in one fell swoop, Chen Mobai not only used up all his savings, but also sold all the blank talisman paper he had cut and saved in his spare time, barely raising enough merit to buy the 3 green arrow talismans. If I break through the barrier and find nothing valuable inside, I'll be spitting blood from the loss. Chen Mobai muttered to himself, gathering the spiritual power within his body. He even took out his wooden armor talisman and infused it with a stream of spiritual power to pre-activate it, in case something unexpected happened when the seal was broken and he was hit by the aftershocks. Splash! Just then, the sound of rushing water rang out. As Chen Mobai stared wide-eyed in disbelief, he saw the spherical light shield that enveloped the entire water mansion open up, and two figures fell in. The two were an old man and a young man. The old man had gray hair, held a black flag, and his eyes gleamed with a sharp light. The young man had an ordinary appearance and wore a brown long robe. After landing, he immediately kept a 2-meter distance from the old man. The two of them, along with Chen Mobai standing in the front hall, formed a triangle, each looking at the other in bewilderment. End of this chapter. Chapter 9, Eastern Wilderness. Young man, why are you in my master's cave? The oldest man was the first to come to his senses, raising the black flag in his hand and asking with a frown. Upon hearing this, Chen Mobai inwardly cried out in alarm and showed an embarrassed expression. Within the immortal sect, one is not allowed to investigate another's cultivation level without the master's permission. So he did not know the two people's realms, but judging from the fluctuations in spiritual energy, they should be similar to his own. Moreover, the way the old man and the young man entered the cave clearly showed that they had the correct key. Although he entered the water mansion unintentionally, he had still occupied this precious place to cultivate for a few days. Now that he had been caught in the act by the master's disciple, he still felt a little embarrassed. Please don't be offended, sir. I entered by accident and will leave immediately. Chen Mobai wanted to leave, but when he suddenly saw the old man and the young man entering the water mansion, who were standing in unfamiliar postures, a thought flashed through his mind, and he stopped what he was doing. I see. The azure water formation shows no signs of damage. Young brother, you said you accidentally stumbled in, and that must be true. The old man waved the black flag in his hand, checked the great formation protecting the entire cave, and confirmed that the restrictions on the 3 side halls were intact. He breathed a sigh of relief and nodded to Chen Mobai. I will release the formation now. Young brother, you can go out. As they were talking, Chen Mobai saw a hole 2 meters in diameter appear in the light barrier surrounding the water mansion at the main entrance of the front hall. But the water outside did not flow in, as if it was blocked by an invisible force. Under the watchful eyes of the old man and the young man, and with their obvious attitude of seeing him off, Chen Mobai, though suspicious, nodded slightly, passed between the two and walked to the cave entrance. Buzz! Just as Chen Mobai was about to cross the light barrier entrance, a beam of azure light, like ink spilled from the sky, poured out from his clenched palm and transformed into a set of wooden armor that covered his entire body, enveloping him completely. Duh. 3 long, yellowish-brown needles appeared out of nowhere, their tips glowing with a dark yellow light, and pierced the wooden armor in front of Chen Mobai. It's just trespassing, yet they've resorted to such violence. Is there no law left? Chen Mobai turned around and saw the ordinary-looking boy holding a needle box in one hand and making a hand seal with the other, his eyes cold. He couldn't help but be furious. The Earth Star, ruled by the immortal sect, internally adheres to the legal system of the previous civilization. Murder is a serious crime. If Chen Mobai hadn't already pre-activated the wooden armor talisman, and it hadn't been automatically triggered by the attack, he probably would have died on the spot. What are you waiting for? Seeing his magical artifact blocked and Chen Mobai looking murderous, the brown-clad youth feared that his opponent might have some mutually destructive methods. Although he had already reached the 6th level of Kai refining, he didn't want to waste too much spiritual energy before breaking the restriction. So he pulled out 3 more long needles from the needle box and shouted at the old man. All right, behold my divine thunder. Upon hearing this, the old man shouted loudly, his eyes flashing with a fierce light. He waved the black flag in his hand at Chen Mobai, and then flicked a dark blue talisman out of his sleeve with his other hand. But the talisman was pointed at the brown-clad boy. With a thunderous roar, the brown-clad youth cursed angrily, then forcibly reversed his spiritual power, turning the flying needle he had been controlling, which was about to be shot at Chen Mobai, around to pierce the old man instead. Just as Chen Mobai was completely bewildered, the brown-clad youth was struck by the old man's divine lightning and fell to the ground with a look of resentment on his face. His flying needles were blocked by the power of the water mansion formation, manipulated by the old man waving the black flag. With a ding-ding-ding sound, the flying needle fell onto the floor tile, its tip piercing straight in, demonstrating its sharpness. Ha, with your mere third-rate inheritance from the flying needle sect, you actually dare to share the spoils of this secret realm with me. This is the lawless eastern wilderness. Amidst the old man's laughter, he waved the black flag in his hand again, attempting to kill Chen Mobai by manipulating the azure water formation. However, the latter's wooden armor talisman power had not yet been exhausted, blocking the oncoming waves. Where exactly is this place? The eastern wilderness. This place name isn't among the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands of the immortal sect. Chen Mobai was still reeling from the shock of the old man, and the boy turning on each other and killing each other. But the burning heat from the exhaustion of the spiritual power of the wooden armor talisman in his palm instantly snapped him out of his daze. The old man's cultivation level was unknown, but the black flag in his hand was the central element of this water mansion formation, capable of controlling the power of the entire formation. Although this azure water formation has no destructive power, if Chen Mobai were trapped and struck by a lightning talisman like the brown-clad youth, his fate would be the same, utterly dead. At the critical moment of life and death, Chen Mobai did not hesitate at all and unleashed a green arrow talisman that he had prepared in advance. His. 5 long, cyan arrows appeared from the void like vines, covering the area where the old man was at an extremely fast speed. HMPH, if this were outside the water mansion, I would definitely give way. The old man chuckled and confidently waved the black flag in his hand. The power of the azure water array was activated, transforming into invisible ripples that froze the 4 cyan arrows that were falling in front of him in midair. You little brat, how did you even reach the 5th level of Kai refining? Your aim is so bad. Just as the old man was smiling and preparing to seal the cave entrance, trapping Chen Mobai to death, his expression suddenly froze because he discovered that the azure water formation was out of control. He then saw that the light shield entrance, which was about to be sealed off, stopped. Chen Mobai, who could have used this to escape the water mansion formation, stopped at the entrance, took out 2 more azure arrow talismans, and stared at him coldly. How did this kid know that this array flag is for protection? The old man looked around and his heart skipped a beat. It turned out that Chen Mobai's green arrow talisman and the 4 spiritual arrows that shot at him were just a decoy to attract his attention. Another arrow, seemingly shot off course, landed precisely on a base of an array not far from him, snapping a flag planted there. Although the azure water formation is a 2nd-tier formation, it is completely defenseless against attacks from within the formation. Having already thoroughly explored this water palace, Chen Mobai used this knowledge to break one of the array flags, causing the originally smoothly functioning array to immediately stall. The old man's face turned ashen. He glanced at the 3 side halls behind the water mansion, but sensing that the talisman in Chen Mobai's hand was about to be activated, he gritted his teeth and prepared to retreat. His cultivation level was only at the 3rd level of Kai refining. If it weren't for the black flag in his hand being the central control point of this azure water array, he would never have dared to attack the brown-clad youth and Chen Mobai. But at that moment, a burst of azure light flashed across the sky, and the 2 azure arrow talismans in Chen Mobai's hand were activated, forming 10 spiritual arrows that were aimed at the old man. Young man, no senior, please have mercy. End of this chapter. Chapter 10, Cunning Villain. While begging for mercy, the old man slapped 2 of his treasured protective talismans onto his body. Having witnessed Chen Mobai's ruthless killing of his companion, Chen Mobai hesitated only for a moment before gritting his teeth and activating both of the azure arrow talismans in his hand. At the same time, 5 beads shimmering with colorful light rose up behind him. Behold my green arrow talisman. Thinking of the old man's sneak attack on the brown-clad youth, Chen Mobai sensed that he was a cunning and treacherous villain with a suspicious mind, so he tried to trick him. On the surface, the 2 green arrow talismans erupted simultaneously, 10 spiritual arrows aimed at the old man whose body was protected by a yellow and blue shield. In secret, They also manipulated 5 glass beads, which emitted 5 elements of spiritual energy fluctuations, making them look dazzling, like magic artifacts. As expected, the old man looked suspicious. After a moment of hesitation, the old man gritted his teeth and, relying on his years of experience in combat, made what he believed to be the correct judgment. He felt that Chen Mobai's 2 ostentatious green arrow talismans were a decoy, and the real killing move should be 5 dazzling magic beads that were silent, yet overflowing with the 5 elements' spiritual power. Finally, he activated both of his first-tier mid-grade defensive talismans to withstand the 10 spiritual energy arrows. At the same time, the old man flung out the black flag, triggering the water elemental energy that the azure water array could still control. The energy transformed into streams of water that swept away and enveloped the colorful glass beads that were flying in from another direction. But little did they know, the water formed from spiritual energy had just touched the colorful beads that Chen Mobai had thrown out when they scattered like plaster powder and turned into ashes. Damn it, we've fallen for their trap. This kid is so cunning. The old man had barely entertained this thought when 10 cyan arrows, each imbued with most of Chen Mobai's spiritual power, slammed into the 2 defensive talismans in front of him. The powerful impact forced the elderly man, who was wearing a protective shield, to retreat step by step. The yellow and blue light shields flickered like a light bulb with insufficient power. The old man was only at the 3rd level of Kai refining. Although he had rich experience in combat and was quite wealthy, he was trapped in the pitfalls of empiricism without the support of the Water Mansion formation. He was outmaneuvered by Chen Mobai, and at this moment, the spiritual power in his dantian was almost completely drained by the 2 defensive talismans. But at this point, even if you can't hold on any longer, you have no choice but to tough it out. The old man took out a bottle of pills to restore spiritual power. Ignoring the waste and side effects, he swallowed them all in one gulp. His face turned red, but his spiritual power fluctuations suddenly increased. The yellow and blue light shields seemed to have received enough spiritual power and began to operate at normal power. Thud, thud, thud. 7 cyan spiritual energy arrows were blocked in succession, their power exhausted and dissipated. The yellow light shield around the old man's body also came to an end, turning into a patch of yellow light and disappearing. But at this moment, the old man showed a happy expression, because based on his many years of combat experience, he had estimated that his other water attribute defensive talisman could completely block the remaining 3 spiritual energy arrows. He had done it before. Even when he was only at the 3rd level of Kai refining, he could defeat someone at the 5th level of Kai refining. Just as the old man was starting to think about how to retaliate and kill Chen Mobai to take over the Water Mansion for himself, he suddenly discovered something. No, this kid was plotting against me from the very beginning. The old man tried to adjust his position, but it was too late. Chen Mobai unleashed his spiritual power, and the remaining power of the Azure Arrow Talisman exploded in one go. 3 azure arrows heavily struck the blue light shield on his body, pushing his body back 3 steps. These 3 steps led the old man's back to touch the stone door of the central side hall of the Water Palace. The azure lightning barrier was activated, shattering the old man's still powerful blue shield amidst his despair. It then entered his body without hindrance, blasting him to pieces with a scream. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Chen Mobai was breathing heavily, not only because his spiritual energy was exhausted, but also because he was witnessing a living person die before his eyes for the first time. Although I've seen this scene countless times in movies and TV shows, but never before have I felt such an indescribable, enormous shock. His mind went completely blank. Although he did not kill either of them, he was indirectly involved in both cases. In a moment of dizziness, Chen Mobai sat down on the ground with a thud. He didn't know how much time had passed when a fish with its eyes rolled back landed at his feet, leaving a trail of water. Only then did Chen Mobai finally come to his senses. One of the array flags of the Azure Water Array was broken by his Azure Arrow Talisman, revealing a flaw in the array. The hole that the old man opened seems to be there forever, never to be closed again. This fish, while drifting in the water, was lucky enough to dart into the hole. After losing the protection of the current, it used all its strength to jump to Chen Mobai's side, rolled its eyes, and died. We need to find a way to repair this protective array. Chen Mobai muttered to himself, still not knowing where he was. According to the old man, it was a place called Eastern Wilderness. There is no law here. If others were to discover this water mansion, Chen Mobai felt that reasoning with them would be pointless. Therefore, it would be best to repair the azure water array and hide the water palace again. However, the art of formations is notoriously difficult to master. Although Chen Mobai worked hard in all four disciplines, art, alchemy, weaponry, and formations, his results were only average. He walked to the flag he had broken, tied it up with rope, and put it back up. However, it was of no use. With a sigh, Chen Mobai saw the black flag that the old man had just crushed the glass beads. In a flash of inspiration, he used his telekinetic technique to remotely control the black flag and replace the array flag that he had broken. After waiting for 15 minutes, there was still no response. Chen Mobai racked his brains, recalling all the knowledge about array formations he had learned in class. Finally, I remembered an example that my teacher had mentioned. An array is like a sophisticated machine. After a problem occurs and parts are replaced and repaired, it needs to be reactivated by injecting spiritual energy, just like a new device needs to be powered on and tested. Chen Mobai hesitated for a moment. After all, he was not a professional array master and was afraid that activating this step would be dangerous. But considering the immense help a mid-grade second-tier spiritual land could provide for cultivation during those 3 days at the water mansion, he gritted his teeth and decided to take the risk. A surge of spiritual energy was injected into the black flag. Still no response. No, activation should be done at the main flag. Chen Mobai thought of another point of knowledge, walked to the central array base in the front hall, and poured spiritual power into it. Buzz. Then, to his delight, the entrance to the azure water formation began to slowly shrink until it disappeared completely. It really worked. End of this chapter. Chapter 11 Harvest. Seeing the formation begin to function again, Chen Mobai could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He wanted to sit down and rest, but when he saw the 2 corpses in the water mansion, he really lost his appetite. When I close my eyes, all I can see are their unseeing expressions. However, Chen Mobai had no experience in handling corpses. He paced back and forth in the main hall and saw the dead fish. He wondered if he should throw them into the water outside the formation and let the fish eat them clean. However, after thinking it over carefully, Chen Mobai shook his head. Although he didn't know where this eastern wilderness was, he had been obsessed with various crime dramas since he was a child, and he felt that the fish here shouldn't be that fierce and could completely destroy the evidence. To avoid the bodies floating to the surface and being discovered by cultivators from the eastern wilderness, Chen Mobai felt that the safest way was to remain in this water mansion and completely erase any trace of their existence. But how do we eliminate it? Chen Mobai paced back and forth with a worried look on his face. He thought of burning the body, but even if he had enough heat, he couldn't possibly burn a corpse in this confined space. He had no idea how to do it. Finally, he walked up to the old man's mangled corpse, suppressed his body's instinctive reaction, and was about to turn and leave when he suddenly saw the closed stone door of the side hall. Right, we can take advantage of the restrictions here. Recalling the first time he tried to test the waters with a coin, only to have it vaporized by a ghostly blue electric light, Chen Mobai felt that his idea should work. There's no time to lose. Let's act immediately. The main reason was that Chen Mobai really didn't want to stay with the corpses anymore. He used his most refined lifting technique to grab one of the old man's arms and then flung it toward the stone door of the central side hall. With a whoosh sound, as expected, without the protection of spiritual power and a shield, the blood-stained arm was directly transformed into a large cloud of blood mist by the impact of the dark blue lightning, slightly staining the floor tiles. The bloodstains that splashed onto the stone door triggered the power of the restriction. Sizzle, sizzle. Next, the entire water palace was immersed in the constant flashing and flickering of electric light. After 5 trips back and forth, the old man's body was finally cleaned up. To Chen Mobai's surprise, the restrictive power above the stone door of the side hall seemed to have weakened somewhat. It seems that the restrictions on the side hall are not connected to the spiritual veins of the entire water mansion, making it much easier to break the restrictions. A skilled array master will link several important buildings to the entire spiritual vein array when setting up a protective array. This way, as long as the array remains intact and the spiritual vein does not dissipate, the restrictive power on the buildings will be restored immediately, even if it is worn down. Although this azure water array is not bad, it is clear that the person who set it up simply bought the array plate and array flags and arranged them in the same way. After Chen Mobai finished disposing of the old man's body parts, he found a blood-stained cloth bag on the floor tiles. Being cautious, he used a lifting technique to lift the bag into the air and then poured out its contents from a distance. A whole bunch of things, all clattering and splashing. Besides a dozen or so neatly cut pieces of gold, there were 2 books, 3 bottles of elixirs, a short knife, and a change of robes. Chen Mobai's breath quickened when he saw the gold. Although its value was not as high as that of the previous civilization, it was still a cultivation material in the immortal sects. Whether it was gold powder used for writing and drawing talismans after being specially processed, or gold essence after being refined, it had a large market. These dozen or so gold bars, roughly estimated, are worth about 800 merit points. If handled well, they could yield nearly 1,000 merit points. Chen Mobai, who had never had so much money since childhood, was a little unsettled. He picked up 2 more books and flipped through them. One of them was supposed to be the old man's cultivation technique, called black water technique. Chen Mobai glanced at it and put it down. Now was not the time to study this. After reading the title of another book, he couldn't help but feel breathless. A detailed explanation of the azure water formation. This was actually the instruction manual for the entire water mansion's protective array. Chen Mobai had initially thought the old man was lying when he said he was the disciple of the water mansion's master, but now that he saw this book, he thought it might be true. However, this book on formations was quite thick. Chen Mobai glanced at his phone and realized there was only an hour left before class started, so he didn't study it in detail. At this moment, another question came to his mind. Could he take these things with him when he returned to the city? With this question in mind, he began to deal with the body of the boy in brown. Now that they had more experience, they first used the lifting and turning technique to flip the bag up and down, and sure enough, they found 6 hidden pockets in the brown-clothed boy's sleeve. A bottle of pills, 2 jade-white stones, a foldable crossbow, and a disciple's manual for the flying needle sect. Then Chen Mobai opened the palm-sized needle box in the brown-clad boy's hand, collected the yellowish-brown flying needles that the boy had shot everywhere, and then took the contents of the old man's cloth bag and piled them together. Afterwards, Chen Mobai used the stone gate's restriction to vaporize the corpse again, and then used the old man's spare robe as a rag to wipe all the blood-stained areas in the entire water mansion. The bloodstains on the floor tiles in front of the side hall were wiped clean remotely and precisely by manipulating the robes with a telekinetic technique, and even the fish was put away. Everything was clean and tidy again, and Chen Mobai felt a sense of accomplishment after tidying up his home and making it bright and clean. He plopped down in the middle of the hall, in front of the pile of spoils he had painstakingly collected. The old man's cloth bag was also stained with blood. Chen Mobai thought it was bad luck and didn't use it. He took off his shirt and spread it on the floor tiles, and then put the items on it one by one. He finally touched the 2 jade-white stones. A gentle and pure spiritual energy flowed into his palm along the meridians, like a warm current, making Chen Mobai shiver and almost cry out in pleasure. This, could it be, a spirit stone? If the previous items only excited Chen Mobai, then these 2 jade-white stones completely caused him to lose his composure. You should know that this thing is as valuable as gold in the previous civilization on Earth Origin Star within the immortal sect. However, due to the scarcity of resources on Earth Star, all spirit stone mines have long been explored and surveyed. Except during times of war, mining of spirit stone mines is not permitted. Even so, according to the latest financial report from the immortal sect, the total amount of spirit stones stored on the entire Earth Star is already in a precarious state. If it weren't for a genius who emerged from the immortal sect 2,000 years ago and invented a miraculous technique that could restore dried-up spirit stones to 80% of their original, unused state by infusing them with spiritual energy, The immortal sect's merit system would probably have collapsed long ago due to a lack of spirit stones to exchange for them. Even so, the immortal sects only allow cultivators to exchange merit points for spirit stones at the bank when war is initiated. 10,000 good deeds are equivalent to 1 low-grade spirit stone. End of this chapter. Chapter 12 Explanation. Chen Mobai's parents worked hard all year, but in the end they only earned about 50,000 in good deeds. The 2 spirit stones he currently possesses are equivalent to half a year's income for them. No wonder he lost his composure. The truth is, Chen Mobai had never touched a spirit stone in his entire life. If it weren't for the detailed descriptions of spirit stones in textbooks and movies, he probably wouldn't have recognized them. It was at this moment that Chen Mobai realized that this water mansion might no longer be within the territory controlled by the immortal sect. With trembling hands, he placed the spirit stone on his clothes, then took out his phone and photographed the first 30 pages of detailed explanation of the azure water formation. Chen Mobai was afraid that he wouldn't be able to bring these things back with him when he returned to the city. Take pictures of the books with your phone, so you can at least study the knowledge at school later. He tied the clothes in a knot and hugged them to his chest. Then, Chen Mobai opened the Turtle Treasure app on his phone and pressed the Return to Base button. After a brief flash of silvery light, Chen Mobai opened his eyes and found himself sitting on the bed. I glanced at the clock on the wall. There was exactly half an hour before class. The heavy feeling in his hands made him even more excited. I brought them all back. He opened the clothes, laid out the items one by one on the floor, and checked them again. Unable to contain his excitement, Chen Mobai jumped onto the bed and did a somersault. Fortunately, soundproofing was installed during the construction of the house. Otherwise, the noise alone would have surely woken my parents up. After venting his excitement, Chen Mobai opened his cabinet and put the spirit stones, crossbows, and short knives, items that could easily arouse suspicion, into the back. He then took out a backpack that he hadn't used in a long time and put the gold and books inside. Finally, only the needle case used by the boy in brown was left. Chen Mobai hesitated. This item was undoubtedly a genuine magic artifact, but he didn't know its grade. He didn't know how to use it either. The best way was to sell it directly online. However, on the Zionmen website, the trading of second-hand magical artifacts requires a certificate of authenticity. More than 80% of items used in cultivation, especially magical artifacts, are second-hand. To ensure order in the magical artifact trading market, the immortal sects issue certificates to cultivators who pass the magical artifact appraisal qualification exam and stipulate that every magical artifact must be certified by an appraiser before it is traded. Each transaction requires a new assessment to determine the artifact's wear and tear, its lifespan, and so on. Of course, official regulations are one thing, and actual transactions are another, especially for first-tier magical artifacts. Some low-grade ones are worth less than the cost of hiring an appraiser, so there are still some substandard products circulating in the market. However, if you want to trade Buddhist artifacts and get a good price, the appraisal process is absolutely essential, especially for magic artifacts of the second rank or higher. Due to their immense value, cultivators generally need an appraiser to assess them before they dare to buy them. For this reason, the profession of treasure appraiser is one of the professions with the most examiners among all the arts of cultivation. After purchasing the 3 azure arrow talismans, Chen Mobai was penniless and had no extra merit points to hire a qualified appraiser. Therefore, he could only put the needle box aside for now and deal with it later when he had more money, or perhaps explore it and use it himself. Despite these thoughts, Chen Mobai still put the needle case into his school bag and took it to school. This was the first real magical artifact he had ever owned. With his backpack crammed full of treasure on his back, Chen Mobai went downstairs, threw the fish into the sink, heated up 2 steamed buns for breakfast, and went straight to school. It just so happens that today is the turn of the teacher who teaches formations to come and give a lesson. The teacher's surname is Chan. He is a young intern teacher and is said to be a current student at Danju Academy. Although this teacher had the least seniority in the entire 5th high school of the immortal sect, Chen Mobai felt that her teaching level was among the best. If it weren't for the fact that the school had a principal at the foundation establishment stage teaching, Chen Mobai wouldn't have added the word one of, perhaps because of his young age and similar thinking level to the students. He explained the formations in a simple and easy-to-understand way, using vivid and engaging examples. That is why, even though Chen Mobai didn't pay much attention to the course on formations on a regular basis, he was able to remember almost everything that teacher Chan had taught. Thanks to this, Chen Mobai was able to repair and restart the azure water array. Teacher Chan is good-looking and has a good figure, but he doesn't smile much and is quite serious when lecturing. Otherwise, he would be even more popular. However, among cultivators, there are basically none who are ugly. After all, their ancestors have cultivated immortality for generations, and their bodies have evolved to near perfection. It's just that spiritual roots are arranged by God and depend purely on luck. There's nothing that can be done about it. But acquiring a beautiful physical appearance only delays one's cultivation of Kai by a few years. Some cultivators even go to the hospital for plastic surgery to make their appearance extremely ugly in order to prove their firm belief in the Tao of cultivation, so as to show that they have no other thoughts besides the Tao. For example, Chen Mobai has a cousin who was incredibly handsome in his youth. When he was setting up a stall on the street, someone accidentally filmed him and posted the video online, making him an internet celebrity overnight. But his resolve to cultivate Taoism remained firm. Faced with countless film and television companies that came knocking on his door, he went directly to the hospital to have his face surgically altered to look ordinary and unremarkable. Although his spiritual root aptitude was ordinary, he still entered the Spiritual Pivot Academy in one of the 120 prefectures. Now, he buries himself in the mountains and lay lines every day, excavating the relics of ancient cultivators and conducting protective research. The morning's array formation lesson passed quickly as Chen Mobai focused on reading detailed explanation of the azure water array. After class, he used the same trick again, pretending to fall behind and going into teacher Chan's office. Using the same excuse, he said his parents had hired a private tutor to help him with his college entrance exam results, and he needed to complete several homework assignments on array renovation and repair independently. However, the student was simply too slow-witted and couldn't figure it out, so he had to come and ask his teacher for help. But Chan Si was different from Old Man Ding. After hearing Chen Mobai's words, she took the grade of the azure water array that the latter had written on the draft and frowned slightly. With your skills, would this private tutor dare to assign you second-tier formation homework? As for the issue of restarting the formation after repair and renovation, the entire formation training course has already been taught to me by my private instructor. Chen Mobai tried to explain. Oh, Chansey glanced at him, smiled meaningfully, but didn't say anything more. She picked up her pen, ready to answer all the questions on the draft paper and show off her abilities as a teacher. But after reading it through once, she found that with her limited knowledge, she was at a loss as to where to begin. The formation you taught through private instruction is completely different from the mainstream methods of the immortal sects. They're practically two different systems. End of this chapter. Chapter 13, Needle Box. Oh, is there any difference? Aren't they all the same? Chen Mobai's knowledge of formations was limited to what he learned in class. As for the azure water formation, he felt it was slightly more advanced than the ones explained in class, but there was no fundamental difference between them. How can these be two different systems? On Earth Origin Star, all the resources for cultivating immortality have been nationalized, and all the spiritual veins of the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands have been condensed and unified by the nascent soul ancestor with supreme magic treasures. Therefore, on Earth Origin Star now, people basically don't study the formations that require embedding array flags into spiritual veins. But this knowledge is the foundation of formations, so we, as formation teachers, will explain it in high school classes. But in reality, formations that require the extraction of spiritual vein power to be set up at the second level or above have become dust of the past. The direction of formation advancement supported by the immortal sects and guided by various academies and schools is to borrow the power of natural celestial phenomena and the sun, moon, and stars. After Chen Si finished speaking, Chen Mobai finally understood that the azure water array, which required being rooted in water veins, was extremely rare in the entire immortal sect. It's not that the formation itself is difficult, but rather that it's difficult to obtain permission from the immortal sect's Ministry of Land and Natural Resources to draw upon the spiritual energy within the immortal sect's territory to set up the formation. Perhaps the private tutor my mother hired is a cultivator who participated in the opening up of sea areas, so he is quite persistent about this kind of formation that requires water veins. Chen Mobai offered a forced explanation, and Chan Si glanced at him suspiciously, but didn't delve into it further. "Give me your phone number." Chen Mobai was a little taken aback when Chan Si suddenly asked him for his number. "I only have a basic understanding of formations. It was only in recent years when I was teaching at your school that I filled in the gaps in my knowledge. This azure water formation is a bit beyond my capabilities, and I need to go back and consult with someone. It just so happens that a senior professor specializing in formations is visiting Danju Academy for an exchange. I'll go back and ask him. Give me his phone number, let's add each other as friends, and I'll forward the answer to you as soon as I have it." Chen Mobai was surprised by Chan Si's humility. Despite being a teacher who taught formations, he said he only had a slight understanding of them. "Thank you for your hard work, Teacher Chan." After saying that, Chen Mobai immediately took out his phone and added Chan Si as a friend. Just as he was about to leave, he thought about it and felt a little embarrassed. So he scanned the 30-page detailed explanation of the azure water formation stored on his phone into a text document and sent it to Chansey, saying it was reference material sent to him by his private tutor. "Well, with these, I should be able to give you an answer in the next couple of days. After all, the principles of formations remain the same despite all the variations." When Chan Si saw the document sent by Chen Mobai, his eyes lit up immediately. He took out his paper and pen and began to calculate and simulate the operation of the azure water formation, seemingly intending to first use his own abilities to see if he could deduce all the mysteries of the formation. Seeing her absorbed expression, Chen Mobai didn't dare to disturb her, so he left and closed the door behind him. He originally intended to give Chansey the original text of detailed explanation of the azure water formation for reference, but considering that the origin of this thing might be outside the territory of the immortal sect, and that it was related to evidence that he might be a murderer, he decided to be cautious. So after much deliberation, I decided that once I got back, I would scan the entire book word by word into a document, eliminating all possible traces of exposure before sending it to Chansey. After leaving the office, Chen Mobai planned to go straight home. He now possesses a mid-grade second-tier spiritual vein and looks down on the school's first-tier spiritual energy cultivation room. But after thinking about it, it's better not to attract too much attention. The 5th High School of the Immortal Sect is a national school, and the students who enroll here are mostly from ordinary families. Even geniuses like Song Zheng and Yan Bingxuan, who have already reached the late stage of Kai refining, cherish the 2 hours of free time they have every afternoon. It wasn't that no one gave up their time in the school's cultivation room. 3 students who had already reached the 8th level of Kai refining had enough first-order top-tier spiritual energy for them, so their parents helped them rent a second-order low-grade single cultivation room outside. They would leave school directly after class in the morning. Therefore, if Chen Mobai did not use the school's training room, it would definitely attract attention once people found out. Kai refining cultivators cannot cultivate for more than 8 hours a day, otherwise their meridians and dantian will not be able to withstand it. Chen Mobai did not intend to waste his time here, so he took out the Flying Needle Sect Disciple Manual that the brown-robed boy had dropped and looked through it in the school's training room. It's only 12 pages long. The above section extensively introduced the origins of the Flying Needle Sect. Its founder was a member of the Flying Sand Sect in the 10 Directions Hall. After successfully establishing his foundation, he left the sect because he had no hope of forming his core. The next 2 or 3 pages are all praising how this founder of the Flying Needle Sect established a 300-year foundation and became famous throughout the land after arriving in the eastern wilderness. Then there are the rules that all major sects have, such as not deceiving one's master or ancestors, and not doing evil deeds. None of this was of any use to Chen Mobai, except for the page about sect benefits, which gave him a general idea of the origin of spirit stones. In addition to the sect's responsibilities, joining the Flying Needle sect also comes with the benefit of receiving spirit stones every year. Disciples in the early stage of Kai refining can receive 5 spirit stones a year. Disciples in the middle stage of Kai refining receive 10 spirit stones, and disciples in the late stage of Kai refining receive 20 spirit stones. This young man in brown robes was at the 6th level of Kai refining, already at the peak of the mid-stage of Kai refining. 10 spirit stones were far from enough for his cultivation. He was probably conspiring with the old man to open this water mansion in order to earn some extra money. He never expected that, before he could even show his skills after leaving the sect, he would be ambushed and killed by the old man in the water mansion. The last page contains the brown-clad boy's signature and the Flying Needle sect stamp. This sect manual was distributed and printed in the year 6478 of the Yuan dynasty. Monarchy, it must be the local calendar of the eastern wilderness. At this moment, Chen Mobai already had a vague answer in his mind regarding the location of the water mansion. This place called Eastern Wilderness should have plenty of spirit stones. If I achieve success in my cultivation in the future, I must leave the water mansion and go to the land to see the world. After reading the disciple manual of the Flying Needle sect, Chen Mobai took out the needle box, opened it gently, and wanted to try refining it. A total of 12 earthen yellow flying needles were neatly arranged inside. He infused them with spiritual power, and one by one the flying needles rose up. Finally, with all his might, a total of 10 flying needles combined with his spiritual power and slowly rose into the air. It seems that one can control all the flying needles at the 6th level of Kai refining. Chen Mobai thought to himself, he was at the 5th level of Kai refining and could control 10. If he were to fully refine them, they would be just the right size to use. However, he had never used a magical artifact before, and after only 3 minutes, he found that most of his spiritual energy had been used up, and all 10 flying needles fell down uncontrollably. No wonder he always fires 3 at a time when he uses them. Chen Mobai recalled the scene of the brown-clad boy casting the spell, and realized how wrong he was. Even if one could raise 12 flying needles at the 6th level of Kai refining, to control them as smoothly as one's own body would probably require at least the 7th level of Kai refining. After meditating to recover his spiritual power, he tried to manipulate the 3 flying needles again. Although the time was extended to a quarter of an hour, the long, yellowish-brown needles that flew up were stiff and unresponsive. If there were a matching refining technique, that would be great. End of this chapter. Chapter 14 Wu Wan. After figuring out how to use the needle case for a while, Chen Mobai finally waited until the 2 hours were over. Without needing to cast the soul-suppressing incantation, he simply opened the door and walked out. Only the last batch of unlucky souls remained outside the door. Chen Mobai didn't see any familiar classmates, which saved him the trouble of saying hello. He simply picked up his backpack and left the school. Instead of going home immediately, he used his student card to take public transportation to a large, comprehensive raw material trading market in the east of the city. Chen Mobai's mother works at a talisman factory. He was taken there to play for a few years when he was a child, so he is very familiar with the process of this small factory. The shop owner was a second-tier talisman master who ran a talisman shop in the city. To save costs, he also opened a talisman paper and accessory factory. The large talisman paper that Chen Mobai cut was bought by his mother at an internal discount price. Although the talisman paper factory was not large, it was fully equipped and could produce brushes, ink, paper, and inkstones. However, gold powder, a material rarely used in drawing talismans, was purchased from outside. If Chen Mobai remembered correctly, the shop that supplied gold powder to the talisman accessory factory was located here. Cultivators generally have excellent memories. After asking 3 people, Chen Mobai accurately located Wu's gold shop in a corner of the trading market. "Hello, guest, how can I help you?" As soon as I entered, a young monk holding a book behind the counter immediately stood up and greeted me with a smile. "Do you buy and sell gold?" Chen Mobai went straight to the point. He had already checked the latest gold price published on the Immortal Sects website before coming here, and he was prepared to accept a small loss if he came to sell. However, the young cultivator did not try to lower the price. After accepting the gold, he placed it on a professional magic tool to test its parameters, and then offered 843 merit points as the purchase price, based on the market price. "Your gold is of decent quality. It seems to have been refined by a cultivator using spiritual energy. Let's round it up to 850. Upon hearing this, Chen Mobai felt that the boss was someone he could get along with, and immediately nodded. After the transaction, seeing the extra 850 merit points in his account, Chen Mobai suppressed his excitement and was about to leave when he suddenly noticed the books the young cultivator had placed on the counter. "Second level appraiser, exam prediction questions. Is the boss perhaps an appraiser?" Chen Mobai asked curiously. As we all know, the qualification certificate exams of the immortal sects are all in ascending order of rank. Since you are looking at the content of the second-rank treasure appraiser, you must have passed the first-rank exam. The exam questions 2 years ago were relatively easy. I barely passed. The young monk said something modestly, and then handed over a business card. "Wu Wan, owner of Wu's Gold Shop, certified first-tier appraiser by the Immortal Sect." After reading it, Chen Mobai was filled with awe. Most of the professional certificates for various arts and crafts in the Immortal Sects are issued by the official authorities only after rigorous selection and assessment. A level 1 appraiser is someone who has mastered the knowledge of appraising most magical artifacts and tools below level 2, and only then are they allowed to register and be certified. The young boss in front of me can already issue certificates for all first-tier magical artifacts, and the certification results are recognized by all trading markets. "Master Wu, I happen to have a magical artifact that my ancestors obtained during the war. I found it while cleaning the old house during the winter break. Because it has been so long, no one in the family remembers it. Could you please help me appraise it?" Chen Mobai took out a needle case from his school bag. Upon seeing this, Wu Wan's smiling face instantly turned serious. He first took a pair of disposable thin gloves from his cabinet and put them on before solemnly accepting the needle case. "Guest, would you like this magical artifact appraised as a preliminary one, or a more in-depth one?" Wu Wan's words left Chen Mobai bewildered. Shouldn't treasure appraisal be a one-step process? After realizing that he was a complete novice, Wu Wan explained it to him. The appraisal of this ritual artifact was divided into 3 levels. The first level is observation. It involves determining the grade, materials, and crafting techniques of the magical artifact. The second level requires the use of professional instruments to determine the remaining lifespan of the ritual implements, and whether there are any hidden defects. As for the final third level, it tests the appraiser's abilities the most. It requires deducing the refining techniques of the magical artifact and creating or deduce a spell that can perfectly unleash the artifact's power. The appraisal process involves 3 stages, with fees increasing progressively for each stage. However, for most magical artifacts, especially first-tier magical artifacts, only the first level of appraisal is required. After Wu Wan explained it to him, Chen Mobai finally understood the ins and outs. The price of first-tier magical artifacts is limited, but the market is the largest, and the profit margin is meager. Except for truly exceptional pieces, they are generally only appraised at the first level. Moreover, many shops only need an appraiser's certificate and are purely focused on selling, without spending a lot of money on in-depth appraisal. Chen Mobai inquired about the price. Since Wu Wan was a newly recruited appraiser with limited performance and insufficient points, his fees were relatively low. "Your magic artifact is a mid-grade first-tier item, so I'll charge you 200 merit points." After touching it, Wu Wan had a general idea of the needle box's grade, and gave Chen Mobai a price that made Chen Mobai feel the pinch. That's enough to buy 6 green arrow talismans. But when he thought about the stiff image of himself controlling the flying needles and the danger of the eastern wilderness, where the water mansion was located, Chen Mobai gritted his teeth and agreed. After agreeing on the price, Wu Wan placed the needle case on a workbench in the corner of the shop, and then began the appraisal using his professional knowledge. First, the strength of the spiritual energy was tested to confirm its grade. The refining method is a bit unorthodox, but judging from the overall spiritual energy fluctuations in materials, it's definitely a mid-grade first-tier magic weapon. Wu Wan then took out an A4-sized sheet of official certification paper from the Immortal sect and filled in his judgment in the blank spaces for grade and material. The needle case is carved from a single piece of magnet. If you want to know the specific type of magnet and its place of origin, you need a second level of identification. Chen Mobai immediately shook his head, saying there was no need for that. The flying needle is probably made of a mixture of several metals that react very strongly to magnetic forces. Even if you want to do a second-level identification, I can't help you because it requires professional instruments. This magical artifact is quite ingenious, as it doesn't require much spiritual energy. The key to control and maneuvering lies in this needle box. As long as you can skillfully control the magnetic force, you can easily control the flying needles. As expected of a professional appraiser, Wu Wan did not inject any spiritual power. He simply relied on his knowledge to explain the crafting techniques and usage tips of the needle box. Chen Mobai felt ashamed when he thought about how he had completely ignored the needle box in the school's training room, using it only as a storage container and constantly pouring spiritual energy into the flying needles. No wonder he exhausted his spiritual energy after only 3 minutes of control. He thought it was because his cultivation was insufficient. It turns out the method was wrong. No wonder it was so inefficient. End of this chapter. Chapter 15, Fictitious Transaction. Guessed, if the information is correct, I need to affix my professional seal. Inside the shop, Wu Wan handed the cardboard certificate containing the owner's information to Chen Mobai for confirmation. Then, he solemnly opened a safe, took out a crimson seal, and stamped it directly onto the certificate without needing ink. The bright red oval seal of a first-level appraiser appeared on it. The innermost part of the seal is Wu Wan's regular script. The upper semicircle is the words first-level appraiser, and the lower semicircle is a series of arranged numbers. This string of numbers is the anti-counterfeiting code that is randomly generated each time it is stamped. After I take a picture of this certificate and register it on the Immortal Gate website, anyone who enters this string of numbers can see this certificate. After Chen Mobai took the needle case and certificate, he first checked it on his phone, only to find that the page that popped up was blank, which puzzled him. I haven't uploaded it yet. Wu Wan was both amused and exasperated, but he immediately logged into the electronic archive of the appraisers on the Immortal Gate network with his own account, and uploaded the certificate of authenticity for the needle box. Chen Mobai tried again, and finally the relevant page appeared. Master Wu, thank you for your hard work. After paying 200 merit points with satisfaction, Chen Mobai accepted the needle case. Little Chen, if you want to sell this magic artifact, you can list it in my shop. It will also help me accumulate some points. If you agree, I can not only return your merit points, but also help you complete the incantation for this magic artifact for free. While filling out the information for the owner of the magical artifact, Wu Wan already knew Chen Mobai's name. Knowing that he was still a student, only 18 years old, and lacked social experience, an idea suddenly welled up in his mind. Within the immortal sects, due to the scarcity of resources, almost everyone who embarks on the path of cultivation will be troubled by spiritual energy and supplies. Many of them will rely on the Immortal Sect network to open personal online stores in order to make money. Although Wu Wan obtained a Level 1 appraiser certificate and was considered a prominent figure among Kai refining cultivators, he was still struggling to find resources for foundation establishment. Besides this family-run shop, he also refines weapons on his own. After all, treasure appraisers don't make a fortune, and every cultivator who learns treasure appraisal initially aspires to become a weapon refiner. The personal shops on the Immortal Gate network accumulate points through buying and selling, and the more points you have, the more you can exchange for official profound techniques, elixirs, and magical artifacts. The Immortal Sect governs the earthly star and upholds the order of the previous civilization. Although the nascent soul ancestor suppresses heaven and earth, economic crises still occur several times. The main problem is that there aren't enough spirit stones. When starting a war, cultivators would immediately exchange any merit points in their accounts for spirit stones at the bank. Even if they couldn't use them all, they would save them for future generations. As a result, even with the national bank's vast reserves of spirit stones, it couldn't withstand the rush to redeem them by hundreds of millions of cultivators. Then the economic crisis hit. Although the immortal sects successively issued decrees, such as prohibiting the exchange of spirit stones, raising the exchange price, and even devising a secret technique to reinfuse depleted spirit stones with spiritual energy to restore them, the operating rules of the market economy could not be eliminated even by the powerful ancestor of the nascent soul stage. However, over the thousands of years, the 3 halls and 4 departments under the immortal sect have gathered countless geniuses from the earthly origin star, and there are countless people with extraordinary wisdom. 1,000 years ago, someone proposed opening up the 84,000 Taoist books treasured in the immortal sect's National Library, allowing all cultivators to exchange them freely using points. These points, however, could only be earned by spending merit points in the immortal sects market. For example, Chen Mobai bought 3 green arrow talismans online, spending 105 merit points, which added 105 points to his personal account. This policy instantly revitalized the previously stagnant market economy of the immortal sect. In just 10 years, 90% of the spirit stones stored in the private sector flowed back into the national bank, replacing them with merit points in everyone's accounts. You can also earn points for offline transactions, but both the buyer and seller must pay taxes to the Immortal Gate Tax Bureau. For example, the 200 merit points Chen Mobai gave Wu Wan for appraisal fees, if he wanted to exchange them for points, would require paying a 20% consumption tax to the immortal sect. In fact, this 20% tax is split 10% between the buyer and seller, but the person receiving the money would definitely be unwilling to do this unless Chen Mobai gave Wu Wan another 20 merit points. Then the latter would agree to go to the tax bureau with him. After all, you only earn points when you make purchases. You don't earn points when you receive money. Therefore, in the market of the immortal sect before a transaction, it is always confirmed whether the consumer needs points. If so, the tax will be added to the total price in advance. Therefore, the immortal sects do not force people to pay taxes. It is entirely voluntary. But Chen Mobai is clearly not that kind of person. He hasn't reached the point where he needs points yet. Master Wu, what do you mean by that? I don't understand. Chen Mobai found it a bit strange. Only consumers get points. Even if his magic artifact is sold in Wu Wan's shop, it has nothing to do with him. I'm an appraiser, and it's normal for me to earn money with my own skills. If you sell this magical artifact to me, and I use my professional knowledge to complete the refining and usage incantation of the needle box, then the selling price will naturally double. Am I right? After Wu Wan finished speaking with a smile, Chen Mobai shuddered, a chill running down his spine. Master Wu, this is a fictitious transaction which is illegal. To earn points, fictitious transactions are common. Although taxes have to be paid to the immortal sect, a single magical artifact can generate points through 2 transactions. In the official flagship store of Xianmen.com, every now and then, there will be elixirs and potions that can improve the success rate of Foundation establishment, which can be purchased and auctioned off, and they also need to be redeemed with points. Wu Wan had already been planning for this, and had accumulated a considerable amount of time. However, this behavior is similar in nature to tax evasion in the mechanical civilization of Earth Star before. If caught, the immortal sect will punish the cultivator until they are bankrupt. Many people do this. The immortal sect turns a blind eye to this for the sake of economic circulation. If the tax revenue is less at the end of the year, the higher-ups will be dissatisfied and will only target the wealthy top earners. You can rest assured. If you agree, I guarantee that this needle case can be sold for at least 80,000 merits. Seeing Chen Mobai hesitate, Wu Wan increased the stakes. Although he looked young, he was already 45 years old. If he didn't try to establish his foundation now, his chances of success would become increasingly slim. Next month, the Immortal Sect flagship store will release a batch of pulse protection pills, spirit enhancement powder, and Kai condensation liquid, all of which are spiritual medicines that increase the chances of foundation establishment. Wu Wan is just 300,000 points short of winning one of the items. Normally, he wouldn't dare to fabricate transactions to cheat for points. But now that the Great Tao is right in front of him and he's a bit short on cash, he wants to try any opportunity to get points. What if he gets lucky and successfully establishes his foundation? This ritual implement is an heirloom. If I want to sell it, I need to ask my elders in the family for permission. Chen Mobai was a good student and politely declined. Wu Wan didn't say much, only looking regretful. He'd just been trying to fool Chen Mobai because of his youth. End of this chapter. Chapter 16, Black Water Skill. Human nature is treacherous. After leaving Wu's gold shop, Chen Mobai sighed inwardly. No wonder many monks would rather pay a little more to go to those big brand stores. At least those stores won't try to take every customer down illegal paths. Although fictitious transactions for points are commonplace in the immortal sects, they are only done among acquaintances, implying that both parties hold leverage over each other. Chen Mobai and Wu Wan only did one business deal, and there was absolutely no trust between them. Chen Mobai is still young. Based on his current cultivation progress, coupled with the second-tier spiritual land of the Water Mansion, he will definitely be able to reach the Kai refining perfection stage and attempt to break through to the foundation establishment stage. It is not yet time to take any risks. After this transaction, Chen Mobai, who had originally planned to explore the area further, lost all interest. After returning home by public transportation, he decided to treat himself, having a large sum of money. He didn't cut any more talismans, and he didn't even cook dinner, ordering a spicy hot pot instead. While waiting for his takeout, Chen Mobai scanned the entire detailed explanation of the Azure Water Formation into a document and sent it to teacher Chan. Then, he took out the black water technique and started reading. This is a typical water attribute Kai cultivation technique, with 9 levels. One can cultivate all the way to the Kai cultivation perfection, and it also records 3 accompanying spells. These are water control technique, water elemental shield, and ice technique. The 3 spells are taught in a progressive manner. The water control spell is the simplest, but it takes a considerable amount of time to master it. Once one has mastered water control, one can harness refined spiritual water to create a water elemental shield to protect oneself. This can be considered a spell that can replace defensive magic artifacts and is quite popular among low-level cultivators. The final frost spell is the most difficult. According to the description in Black Water Technique, one must first condense one's spiritual power into a breath of ice, and then combine it with the water control technique to freeze the refined spiritual water and transform it into any form one desires, whether for attack or defense. Although this technique is simple, it has already formed its own system, and the practice of the 3 spells can, in turn, promote the improvement of the Kai cultivation realm. Not bad, not bad. If it weren't for the fact that my water elemental root attribute is only 23, I would want to switch cultivation immediately. Several major hospitals in the Immortal sect have conducted joint experiments. If one of the spiritual root attributes exceeds 33 points, the efficiency of cultivating the 5 elements technique is not as good as that of a single attribute Kai cultivation technique. For someone like Chen Mobai, whose talent is almost classified as a pseudo-spiritual root, cultivating the 5 elements technique is the most suitable option, whether it's for his cultivation progress or the efficiency of refining spiritual energy. For Chen Mobai, the greatest value of this black water technique manual, besides being a reference, lies in the 3 spells it records. Although the knowledge within the immortal sects is shared, it still requires points to exchange for. Moreover, before exchanging spells from the immortal sect, one must swear an oath that one can only cultivate them oneself and cannot pass them on. Only schools can openly and legitimately teach magic. The lifting, cleansing, and Kai cultivation techniques that Chen Mobai knows are what he was taught at school. However, most students are instilled with the idea that cultivation is paramount from a young age, and the spells they are passionate about are limited to everyday use. After all, Earth Star is too peaceful. There are many petty thefts and tax evasions, but major crimes like murder have not been heard of for a long time. Only when war is imminent will cultivators begin to practice spells for combat. In peacetime, students in schools are all focused on cultivating their Kai and improving their cultivation level, hoping to achieve Kai cultivation perfection as soon as possible and break through to the foundation establishment stage. Just as Chen Mobai was comparing the water element shield with the flowing water shield given to him by Old Man Ding, the doorbell rang. The takeout has arrived. Chen Mobai went into the kitchen, poured the spicy hot pot into a bowl, and was about to scoop out a bowl of spirit rice to eat when he suddenly saw a fish in the sink that had been gutted but still looked somewhat familiar. Hey, isn't this the fish he brought from the water palace? He left in a hurry this morning, and after dealing with his spoils, he just threw it into the water tank. Chen Mobai had originally planned to make a bowl of boiled fish when he got back that night so as not to waste the food. But after making a profit from selling gold, he forgot all about it. It must have been dealt with when my mother passed away. Thinking this, Chen Mobai looked at the fish meat, which was transparent with a faint pinkish-white hue. With a swift movement, he sliced the fish into pieces. Then he turned on the fire, poured his spicy hot pot into the pot as a broth base, and added the fish pieces one by one. After all that hard work, the moment the tender, spicy fish entered his mouth, Chen Mobai squinted his eyes in satisfaction. After finishing his meal, he didn't waste any time and teleported directly to the water palace. He first circled around the water mansion, and finding nothing had changed since he left, he felt relieved and walked to the array flags. He sat down on the futon he had brought and began to refine the rich spiritual energy of the second-tier water vein. The next day, during class, Chen Mobai stared at his phone screen with a strange expression. He has a habit of recording himself on his phone every time he practices, then importing the recordings into an app called Cultivation Assistance to compare them with previous recordings, identify differences, correct mistakes, and retain the strengths. The Cultivation Aids software hasn't popped up for 6 months, which means that his cultivation time and posture are now at their most suitable level, leaving no room for correction. But this morning, a pop-up window suddenly appeared. The system detected that the user's spiritual energy cultivated last night had 2 more points of water attribute than usual. Please confirm the reason. The software that assists in cultivation points out the differences, but it doesn't analyze the reasons, which users need to find out themselves and then provide feedback. Chen Mobai recalled his cultivation yesterday, which was exactly the same as when he was in the water mansion. He hadn't even moved his position. He was still on that futon. If I can't figure it out, I can only do more experiments. That day, Chen Mobai started recording again and cultivated in the water mansion all night, making further progress in his 5 elements technique. The system detected that the user's spiritual energy cultivated last night had 2 fewer points of water attribute than yesterday. Please confirm the reason. Another pop-up window appeared. Chen Mobai confirmed that there must have been something different about him the day before yesterday. The Cultivation Assistance software was developed by the Bushan Academy, one of the 4 major academies, and after hundreds of years of adjustments, it has become very perfect. The software is fine, so what exactly is wrong with me? Chen Mobai fell into deep thought, beginning to recall all his experiences from the day before yesterday. Attending classes, asking teachers questions, studying in the meditation room, experimenting with needle cases, selling gold. Thinking of Wu's gold shop, Chen Mobai frowned slightly, but he was certain that he had not had any physical contact with Wu Wan. They had only talked and done a business deal. Memories flood back, ordering takeout, slicing fish, eating, returning to the water palace to cultivate, and then coming back to attend class. A complete circle clearly appeared in Chen Mobai's mind. He thought about the difference between himself that day and his usual self, and how it could affect the adaptive spiritual power cultivated by the 5 elements technique. So the most likely reason was that there was a difference in the spiritual root attribute points. Take out. Chen Mobai thought about the thing he had eaten. It might affect his spiritual root, but it shouldn't be like that. He had secretly clicked on it several times before, and he had never seen a pop-up window appear to help with cultivation. Could it be that there's something wrong with that fish? End of this chapter. Chapter 17, Rejuvenating Spirit Water. After class, Chen Mobai did not fall behind again. Relying on his improved speed after consolidating his realm, he secured a spot in the first batch of cultivation rooms. He needs to go to the water palace as soon as possible today to verify whether it was the fish that caused the ripples in his otherwise uneventful cultivation. He didn't waste the 2 hours he spent in the meditation room, carefully reading the emails Chansey had sent him. Having obtained the complete text of detailed explanation of the azure water formation, the formation teacher did not disappoint him. After thoroughly understanding and mastering the material, he created a very detailed courseware breaking down the formation, starting with the 5 basic components of this second-order formation: gathering spirit, concealment, complexity, water control, etc. Having personally experienced the azure water formation, Chen Mobai easily understood it. By comparing his own exploration and experience with the array flags over the past 2 days with the extremely detailed explanations in the courseware, he instantly grasped the basics of this second-order array. 2 hours passed quickly. The alarm clock rang, startling Chen Mobai, who was engrossed in studying, awake. Teacher Chan could definitely give a very pleasant lecture. As he muttered to himself, Chen Mobai recalled how dull Chansey's lectures were, completely unaware that it was because he himself was not interested in what was taught in class. That's how people are. Even cultivators will stay up all night to figure out anything that interests them. After getting up and leaving the cultivation room, Chen Mobai stretched and looked around before suddenly freezing in place. I don't know what happened, but I was incredibly lucky. The one who came out of the training room on the left was Yan Bingxuan. After a few days apart, the class beauty seemed to have become even more aloof. She must have officially begun cultivating the frost condensation technique and started to transform her spiritual root into ice. The other person in the training room to Chen Mobai's right was another genius from their class, Song Zheng. He probably didn't manage to snag a spot in the first batch of second-tier training rooms today, so he's come to this first-tier training room to tide him over. Chen Mobai wasn't in the same circle as the two of them, so he didn't know how to greet them. After an awkward silence, Song Zheng spoke first. Yan Bingxuan, I still think your choice is wrong. With your talent, if you had focused on improving your cultivation and studying this semester, you could at least have taken the entrance exams for the 4 major academies. You might have been able to leap over the Dragon Gate and soar to great heights. However, Song Zheng completely ignored Chen Mobai and spoke calmly to Yan Bingxuan across him. You can't discuss ice with a summer insect. In response, the increasingly aloof Yan Da Marin uttered an idiom that made Song Zheng frown and almost lose his temper. I have received the inheritance from Teacher Ding, and also have the method to transform my spiritual root physique into the 3 Yang body. However, I feel that my limit should not be the pure Yang Academy. Only the 4 great academies are the places I should go. Song Zheng's words left Chen Mobai speechless. This person is so confident. If he can get into Chunyang Academy, one of the 10 great academies, his mother can visit the neighbors every day and brag about it for the rest of her life. As for Song Zheng, who was radiating confidence, the beautiful Yan was as taciturn as ever, only uttering an idiom. A frog in a well. Song Zheng's anger was starting to get out of control. Chen Mobai checked the time, and without greeting the two who ignored him, walked straight out between them. Tusk, tusk, tusk. I bet those two will go to the stadium to take care of it. However, before Chen Mobai could leave, he was pulled back by his deskmate Lu Hengsheng. Soon after, a group of classmates gathered around them, all watching Song Zheng, who was clenching his fists and asking Yan Bingxuan for a magical exchange. Fighting is unacceptable in schools. However, exchanging magical skills is encouraged. Among top students, this is often used as an excuse to prove that they are the strongest. I have something to do today, so I'll be leaving now. Tell me about the outcome of their fight later. Although Chen Mobai was also eager to see the interaction between the only 2 top students in the class who had reached the late stage of Kai refining, he thought about his plans for the evening and decided not to waste his precious time watching. Lu Hengsheng's attention was entirely focused on the 2 top students, so he responded casually. By the time he realized what was happening, Chen Mobai had already disappeared. That kid's been acting a bit strange lately. Yes, he's the fastest runner after training. Are they dating? The 2 beautiful girls sitting in front of him exchanged a few words that made Lu Hengsheng suddenly realize that it really made sense. Hurry up, the beautiful Yan has agreed. But before they could investigate further, Yan Bingxuan had already turned and walked towards the stadium with a cold smile. To avoid damaging the venue, magical duels must be held in areas within the school that are protected by protective barriers. The stadium is it. After running out of the school, Chen Mobai immediately put this trivial matter out of his mind. On his way home, he saw a pharmacy and went inside. The pharmacy wasn't big, but it had a fairly complete selection of items. Strangely, there was no one behind the counter. Chen Mobai could only walk around by himself, looking for what he wanted to buy. Hello, is anyone there? After searching around, Chen Mobai couldn't find any test strips that could easily measure spiritual energy attributes, so he shouted towards the back door. They are here. A crisp response rang out, and then the back door was opened. A girl dressed in white clothes, with her hair tied up and wearing a white hat and mask walked in. Although only half of her face could be seen, one glance was enough to be drawn to her pair of dark, bright eyes, which were captivating and full of charm. Chen Mobai had never seen such clear and pure eyes before, just like her clothes, pure white and flawless. Hello, what would you like to do for me? Where is the spiritual energy test strip? I can't find it. Wait a moment, this thing is in the cabinet. I'll get it out for you. The girl in white had delicate features and fair skin. Wearing a mask, a beauty secret, made Chen Mobai glance at her a few more times as he spoke. After the conversation, the girl in white turned and walked towards the counter by the door. Her back was slender, but the faint medicinal fragrance emanating from her body made Chen Mobai frown and cover his nose with his finger. He had a serious illness when he was a child and took medicine for several years, so he doesn't really like the taste of medicine. How many sheets do you need? The girl in white walked over with a box of open spiritual energy test strips. Just then, she noticed Chen Mobai covering his nose with his right index finger, and her dark, bright eyes widened in surprise. 5 is enough, thank you. Chen Mobai reached out his other hand and counted 5 bills from the box the girl was holding, then quickly walked to the door to scan the code and pay. I'm sorry, I was refining rejuvenating spirit water in the back. My extraction skills weren't quite up to par, so I smell a bit of medicine on myself. The girl's voice came from behind. Chen Mobai turned around and saw that she was standing still, not following him, with an apologetic look in her eyes. Oh, are you an alchemist? According to the rules of the immortal sect, only those who pass the professional alchemist examination are allowed to refine medicines. There are many methods for refining elixirs, but on Earth Origin Star, the most common method is water-based elixir refining. Because fire-based alchemy depletes some of the spiritual energy of medicinal herbs, it is somewhat wasteful. Water-based alchemy, on the other hand, emphasizes extraction, resulting in high utilization rates and milder medicinal properties. Most of the decoctions, whether taken or injected, not only have rapid effects but also generally have no side effects. Rejuvenating spiritual water is a first-tier medicinal liquid that can be taken orally and can restore the spiritual power of cultivators at the Kai refining stage. Double updates will begin in a couple of days. End of this chapter. Chapter 18, Azure Dragon Carp. My teacher is an alchemist, but I'm not old enough to have a certificate yet. The girl in white spoke up, saying that not every cultivator can apply for the certificate to take the various immortal arts exams. In order to select candidates and reduce the workload each year, the immortal sect has set restrictions on age, major, and other aspects. For example, a high school student like Chen Mobai does not meet the first criterion because he is too old. The girl in white was for the same reason. The only drawback of water-based alchemy is that it is time-consuming, and it is difficult for a single alchemist to keep an eye on it from beginning to end and participate in the entire process. Therefore, although the rules of the immortal sect stipulate that only alchemists can refine medicines, it is also an open secret in this industry for apprentices to assist in processing some simple auxiliary medicines. Chen Mobai thought that the girl in white in front of him must be a pharmacist intern. He thought of the method for refining spiritual water recorded in the black water technique, but he had no clue how to do it. He wanted to ask for advice, but he couldn't bring himself to ask without a reason. Farewell. In the end, Chen Mobai said 2 words and turned to leave the pharmacy. A strange person. King Nu sensed that Chen Mobai had something he wanted to ask, but for some reason he didn't say it in the end. Watching the boy's figure disappear around the street corner, she shook her head, turned around, and went back to the back room to extract medicinal herbs. Water Palace. Chen Mobai nervously pulled up the black array flag, and the huge hemispherical light shield above his head began to ripple slightly. He immediately followed the method of circulating energy described in the Chancy Corsuare, injecting spiritual power into the array flags. Then, with his other hand, he made 2 simple hand seals and performed 2 sets of movements. Splash! A short while later, the huge, originally smooth and flawless light shield caved in, creating a hole 2 meters in diameter, in the direction the black flag pointed. Chen Mobai suppressed his excitement, replanted the array flags, and walked to the array entrance he had created. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and extended beyond the reach of the light shield, touching the water outside, cool and refreshing, like silk and satin. After playing in the water for a while and confirming that there was no danger outside, Chen Mobai began to lean half of his body out of the water. Since he had not practiced any water avoidance magic, he could only rely on his long, drawn-out breaths to hold on. Even so, he still managed to catch a glimpse of the scenery outside the water palace. This was a lake of unknown size. He couldn't see the edge at all. A type of aquatic plant with a blue fluorescent glow grew on the lakebed, standing out starkly in the dim light. Among the aquatic plants, small blue carp darted back and forth, playing and frolicking. Chen Mobai confirmed that it was the same type of fish he had eaten. He raised the needle box in his hand, circulated the 5 elements technique, and poured in spiritual power, causing a golden stream of light to burst out. Although his use of this magical artifact was still somewhat stiff, Chen Mobai spared no effort and launched the needle straight through the blue carp that couldn't escape in time, without any skill required. Seeing that he had successfully caught the fish, Chen Mobai raised his other hand, and 2 glass beads, along with the spiritual power of his 5 elements technique, flew out like 2 colorful rainbows, trapping the blue carp that was slowly descending after its death. After retrieving the food and flying needles, Chen Mobai once again pulled up the black flag and resealed the entrance to the azure water formation. He first carefully examined the blue carp in his hand and found a dark blue line on its back, like a tendon, and 2 long whiskers around its mouth. It felt cool to the touch, like holding an ice cube. How come this carp looks almost exactly like the azure dragon carp, a second-level protected spirit beast of the immortal sects? Chen Mobai muttered to himself. The bloodline of the azure dragon carp originates from an azure dragon in the deep sea, which was captured with great difficulty when the immortal sect opened up the sea area. It is said that when the azure dragon carp is cooked using a special method, cultivators who consume it can absorb a trace of the water dragon's kai contained within its flesh and blood, which will randomly increase their water spirit root attribute points by 1-5. However, the azure dragon carp of the immortal sect is only kept alive by the Kunpeng Dao Academy. It is regarded as a forbidden possession by the nascent soul master. 20 years ago, this master even added wild azure dragon carp to the latest list of protected spirit beasts of the immortal sect, and cultivators are now prohibited from killing them for cooking. Chen Mobai hesitated for a moment, but ultimately could not resist the temptation and took out the short knife he had obtained from the old man. According to the rules of the immortal sect, wild azure dragon carp are protected spirit beasts, while farmed ones are edible. These blue carp are somewhat similar to the azure dragon carp, but they are still different. They lack spiritual energy and are kept outside the water palace, so they can be considered farmed. Chen Mobai's movements were extremely skillful and seamless as he scaled, gutted, and sliced the fish. This short knife is not a magical artifact, but it is extremely sharp. He tried cutting gold, and it was as easy as cutting tofu. Using it to slice fish is a bit of an overkill. This time he planned to eat it chilled, and even brought ice and seasonings from home. However, since the fish is already cold, the icing process can be skipped. Chen Mobai even brought a can of carbonated drink. If he had also brought a wine glass, the sense of ceremony would have been off the charts. It's a pity that I'm eating it all by myself. A slight sense of regret, accompanied by the cool and tender fish entering the mouth, paired with aged vinegar purchased online from Wangwu Cave, An indescribable sour and numbing sensation unfolds on the taste buds. As soon as the fish entered his stomach, a cool sensation spread throughout his body, causing Chen Mobai to shiver. Immediately afterwards, he felt a sense of comfort and ease, as if he had taken a cool shower on a hot day, feeling pleasant and refreshed. After finishing his meal, Chen Mobai burped, and the first thought that came to mind was, it was such a waste to cook that piece of meat before. Of course, he didn't forget the important matter. After tidying up with a cleansing spell, I sat upright on the futon and circulated the 5 elements technique for one full cycle, before the adaptive spiritual energy he had cultivated could be returned to his danshan. Chen Mobai intercepted a portion of it and injected it into the spiritual energy test paper he had just bought. This is a simple tool for measuring spiritual roots, but it is only for use by practitioners of the 5 elements technique. In the immortal sect, everyone is a cultivator. Basically, every child is taught the art of cultivation and immortality cultivation from the very beginning. In order to measure spiritual roots more easily and quickly, the Imperial Medical Academy invented this spiritual power test paper. As soon as Chen Mobai's spiritual power was absorbed by the test paper, it was instantly dyed with 5 colors. Then, a series of numbers appeared on the paper according to the proportion of the 5 elements' radiance: metal 23, wood 27, water 25, fire 17, earth 10. Sure enough, the water spirit root increased by 2 points. Chen Mobai confirmed one thing, and the next step was to conduct more experiments. He suppressed the burning desire in his heart and got up again to activate the azure water formation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Golden streaks of light shone outside the water mansion, and blue carp that were eating water plants inexplicably became food for Chen Mobai. End of this chapter. Chapter 19, Agency. Inside the classroom, Chen Mobai sat by the window, looking sullen. He almost thought he was about to change his fate. 1 blue carp increases his water attribute spiritual root by 2 points. If he ate dozens of them, wouldn't he be able to transform into a heavenly water attribute spiritual root? However, he forgot one thing. The Cultivation Assistance software detected that his adaptive spiritual energy fluctuated for only 1 day and returned to normal the next day. Reality is a bit cruel. The power contained in the blue carp can only last for 1 day. That day he ate 8 strips in one go, which boosted his water attribute spiritual root to 39 points. The feeling of cultivation was something Chen Mobai had never experienced before. The efficiency of absorbing spiritual energy was almost twice as high as before. In addition to the improvement of his spiritual root attributes, it was also because he was cultivating on a second-order water vein. The combination of these 2 factors almost made Chen Mobai switch to cultivating the black water technique. Fortunately, he was always prudent in his actions and waited a day. The next day, still feeling uneasy in the school's cultivation room, he used the spiritual energy test paper again and discovered that his water elemental root attribute points had dropped again. He refused to believe it and returned to the water mansion that night, catching 5 blue carp to make sashimi. His water elemental root surged again, then plummeted once more after a night of cultivation. However, there was some good news. Perhaps because Chen Mobai ate too much, the power of the blue carp subtly strengthened his spiritual root. After 5 days of gluttony, consuming nearly 40 blue carp, Chen Mobai's water attribute spiritual root points fluctuated like the stock market curve, eventually stabilizing at 30 points and refusing to rise further. Of course, it didn't fall any further. Back and forth, Chen Mobai's water attribute spiritual root points still permanently increased by 7 points. Name: Chen Mobai. Age: 18. Realm level: Kai refining level 5. Spiritual roots: metal 23, wood 27, water 30, fire 17, earth 10. Technique: 5 elements technique. Skills: lifting technique, cleansing technique, spiritual shield, Kai nourishment technique, water control technique. After opening his personal panel software on his phone, Chen Mobai hesitated for a moment, but ultimately manually changed the number of the water attribute in the spiritual root column from 30 back to 23. He already had a feeling that it was best not to let a second person know about the water mansion. Although there is no shortage of techniques and medicines in the immortal sects that can increase and enhance spiritual roots, There are not many that can improve the water spiritual root attribute so immediately. It is almost 20–30% as effective as the Azure Dragon Carp of Kunpeng Academy. The Azure Dragon Carp can permanently enhance a cultivator's spiritual root with each one consumed. The Kunpeng Academy once used this to cultivate a water-based alchemy genius with astonishing comprehension from an ordinary water spiritual root of 33 points to a heavenly spiritual root of 80 points. This was widely publicized by the immortal sects, and for a period of time when Chen Mobai was a child. The television news reported on this every day. Although the blue carp in this water manner cannot compare to the Azure Dragon Carp, their small contributions have accumulated and permanently increased Chen Mobai's water elemental root attribute by 7 points. Once this is publicized, it will definitely cause a huge uproar, because the Azure Dragon Carp was considered the apple of that nascent soul cultivator's eye. No one has been able to eat it for the past 20 years. However, Chen Mobai wasn't dwelling on this matter. He opened his Cultivation Assistant software, looked at the 5 halos above his avatar frame in the upper right corner, and fell into deep thought. Last night, the agent button on Gibao's software suddenly lit up and protruded, and he couldn't resist clicking it out of curiosity. Then the Cultivation Aid software on his phone changed. 5 rings have appeared on his profile picture. Resources are scarce on Earth, but the war of creation every 1,000 years is inevitable. In order to protect their home, 36 celestial satellites orbit the Earth, forming a super formation. These 36 celestial satellites also supply all the networks and communications for the immortal sects on a daily basis. Each satellite is also a super brain, but most of their computing power is used to absorb the spiritual energy of the universe, which is then distributed to thousands of households to supply the cultivation needs of 300 million cultivators. Therefore, in order to avoid wasting computing power, the permissions that each level of cultivator can use in each software are different. For example, if Chen Mobai is at the 5th level of Kai refining, he can only use the most basic functions of various apps on his phone. Take the software that assists in cultivation as an example. If Chen Mobai reaches the foundation establishment stage, then while using the assisted cultivation feature to analyze the video, he can also request to view the footage of golden core cultivators practicing the 5 elements technique in the database. By comparing the two, he can not only correct his mistakes in cultivation, but also learn the most correct method for cultivating the 5 elements technique, as well as various tips and tricks. The software permissions of the immortal sect are displayed using an intuitive halo. For example, if you are at the 1st level of Kai refining, there will be a halo above your profile picture. So here's the question. These 5 halos must refer to the 5th level authority. What realm does the 5th rank correspond to? Chen Mobai did a quick mental calculation and gasped in shock. That's incredible. He's become a nascent soul ancestor. There are only 2 in the entire immortal sect. Couldn't this tortoise shell agent have been a little more discreet? You could have just given them the level 3 golden core realm. Why did they go straight to the level 5 max? Just as Chen Mobai was filled with apprehension, in an office of the Bushan Dao Academy, several cultivators were also looking at the data that had suddenly been transmitted from below and feeling worried. Could it be that the ancestor has awakened and is now in disguise, enjoying himself in the mortal world? When a user with 5th level privileges suddenly appeared, she, the developer of the software that assisted in cultivation, was both surprised and somewhat apprehensive. It should be noted that the 2 patriarchs had been in seclusion for over 300 years without making any moves, while his software was only developed 200 years ago. Although the permissions were divided into 5 levels, in reality, only the 3rd level was improved, because he himself was only at the golden core stage, and there were only a dozen or so nascent soul cultivators even in the immortal sects, and they would go into seclusion for decades. The only things that could help them in their cultivation were the cultivation videos and guidance of the nascent soul ancestor. Before the nascent soul ancestor uploaded his own content, the highest level that the cultivation assistance software could help with was the golden core stage. Therefore, when the 1st level 5 user appeared, she was both excited and apprehensive. Check the location using the backend, then we'll go to the site to find out who it is. Maybe a hacker has cracked the permissions of your software. The big boss, who was an investor, remained very calm. His words immediately calmed down the other cultivators who were thinking about how to curry favor with the ancestor. End of this chapter. Chapter 20 Kingpin. Upon investigation, she immediately frowned. It shows that it's not within the territory of the immortal sect. He reported the result to the big boss, who was usually calm and collected, but was stunned for a moment and almost thought that this employee was playing a trick on him. Our authority over satellites in the sky is only to locate the blessed lands of immortal sects. Since we can't find the address, it must be outside the immortal sects. After she finished speaking, the big boss nodded slightly. Okay, I understand. Keep an eye on this account and notify me immediately if there are any other updates. Before they could be 100% certain that it was a nascent soul ancestor, they dared not disturb the nascent soul master who was in seclusion, so they could only do it this way for now. After hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. Chen Mobai was still worried that his location might be locked by the operator of the Cultivation Assistance Service, which would attract questioning from the cultivators in charge of the immortal sect's security management. 2 days passed without anyone contacting him, and he finally felt relieved. That night, Chen Mobai entered the water mansion again, feeling the pure spiritual energy permeating the surroundings, and couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Thanks to this second-tier treasure land, coupled with his tireless diligence, his cultivation level steadily improved. Based on the current progress, it should take about 2 more months before I can attempt to break through to the 6th level of Kai refining. But this progress is still not enough for him. Among the classmates, there are already Song Zheng and Yan Bingxuan, both at the 7th level of Kai refining. There are a total of 12 people at this level in the entire grade, all of whom have been recommended to the 2 local universities. Compared to them, Chen Mobai, at the 5th level of Kai refining, is completely insignificant. Not to mention, there are 3 geniuses at the 8th level of Kai refining, who are the pride of heaven who may be admitted to the 4 major academies. When the scope is expanded to the entire Danxia city, the number of geniuses among both private and public schools is countless. Leaving aside the student with the heavenly spiritual root from the top high school of the immortal sect, he was already pre-selected by the Gu Mang Dao Academy upon enrollment. In addition, 2 other geniuses with different spiritual roots also received exemption notices from the Natural Academy. It is said that there are students at the 9th level of Kai refining in other high schools, but many of them are hiding their talents, waiting to make a name for themselves in the college entrance examination and be selected for the 4 major academies. If only my spiritual roots were more outstanding. Chen Mobai sighed. Although the main principle of the immortal sect is human will can conquer nature, as long as one has outstanding comprehension and amazing luck, one can make contributions in the war and receive rewards from the higher-ups, directly transforming into a heavenly spiritual root, and then making rapid progress to become a respected ancestor. Such stories are shown on TV every day, but the number of people who can actually do it is very small. While sighing, he picked up his chopsticks, took a slice of chilled fish from the side, and put it in his mouth. The cool and refreshing feeling made him very satisfied. He took out the last spiritual power test paper and measured his spiritual root attribute. Sure enough, his water spiritual root had increased by 2 points, although it was only temporary. This was the last blue carp he caught near the water mansion. Perhaps because he had been catching too many fish recently, no blue carp dared to come within a mile radius anymore. This one was frozen yesterday and still here today. Chen Mobai didn't feel any regret. After all, these blue carp were delicious and also improved his spiritual root attributes. He didn't waste the effects of the fish and meat. Taking advantage of the time it took for his spiritual root to improve, he planned to begin cultivating the 5 elements technique. In the end, he did not switch to the black water technique, not only because his water attribute spiritual root points did not reach 33, but also because the black water technique had no follow-up. Although the 5 elements technique is quite ordinary, the spiritual energy cultivated from it is balanced and harmonious, making it suitable for practicing any other cultivation method without any obstacles. Moreover, if one doesn't mind the weak combat ability, one can use points to exchange for the foundation establishment and golden core chapters of the 5 elements technique at the Immortal Sect National Library. Throughout history, the person who cultivated the 5 elements technique to its highest level was a nascent soul cultivator named Kingping from the Heaven-Mending Tao Academy. However, after Kingping Shangren broke through to the nascent soul stage with the 5 elements technique, he immediately switched to cultivating other techniques because he cannot defeat anyone at the same level. Chen Mobai thought of the legend of Master Kingping's fondness for crushing weak opponents. Before practicing his cultivation technique, he suddenly picked up his phone as if possessed, opened the cultivation aid software, and then entered 5 elements technique in the search bar at the top. After entering the 5 elements technique, he remembered that his cell phone couldn't receive any signal in this water palace. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself, and was about to put down my phone and focus on my practice. Suddenly, a loading circle appeared on the screen, and then in a flash, the circle turned into a tortoise shell, eventually filling the entire interface. As if it had been connected to a signal, more than 10,000 pages of search results appeared in a flash. Chen Mobai's mouth went dry because he saw the first result on the first page of the search results, with the headline, "Guaranteed to Teach and Learn. All the insights gained from breaking through the 5 elements technique to the nascent soul stage." Author Kingping. With trembling fingers, he tapped the screen. At this moment, Chen Mobai couldn't care less about why there was a signal suddenly in the water mansion. The internet speed was incredibly fast. Chen Mobai clicked into an interface that resembled a video website, and the title was exactly the one he had seen outside. This is a video collection. There are a total of 28 videos, each thoughtfully labeled with a subtitle. The first level of 5 elements Kai Cultivation. The second level of 5 elements Kai Cultivation. The third level of 5 elements Kai Cultivation. Up to the very end, 5 elements technique, nascent soul level 1. Chen Mobai eagerly scrolled to the interface of the 5 elements Kai cultivation level 5 and clicked to open it. Hello students, this is your teacher Kingping. Today we will continue to explain the 5th level of the 5 elements technique. Please turn to page 26 of your 5 elements Kung Fu textbooks. Before we begin this lesson, let me go over the homework we assigned yesterday. Although this basic Kai cultivation technique is simple, it contains a wealth of knowledge. It can even be said to be the #1 Kai cultivation technique of the Immortal Sect and the foundation of the Immortal Sect. This is why the Immortal Sect mandates that all cultivators must cultivate the 5 elements technique when they begin their cultivation. Even cultivators with heavenly spiritual roots must cultivate the 5 elements technique to the 7th level before they can switch to cultivating a technique of their own attribute. So what is the reason for this? In this lesson, Teacher Kingping will explain it to you in detail. Chen Mobai couldn't help but turn the video up to double speed. Kingping was just too long-winded. But after watching the 45-minute instructional video, Chen Mobai couldn't help but be amazed and listened to Kingping's explanation of the 5 elements technique cultivation from the beginning at normal speed. Then he eagerly sat cross-legged on the prayer mat. Chen Mobai felt that he could now cultivate to the 6th level of Kai, refining within a month. End of this chapter. Chapter 21. The Theory of Spiritual Roots. The Imperial Medical Academy conducted extensive research on the relationship between spiritual roots and cultivation speed, and eventually compiled a medical classic called On Spiritual Roots. Studies have shown that there is a direct correlation between spiritual root attribute points and cultivation speed. Every cultivator born normally with sufficient innate vital energy has 100 points of spiritual root attribute, which is then distributed into the 5 elements according to their fortune, which is the spiritual root that every cultivator has. The quantity of the 5 elements spiritual roots determines the efficiency of cultivation techniques. For example, if there is a genius with amazing luck who allocates all 100 points to the wood element spiritual root, which is the legendary perfect wood type heavenly spiritual root, then his cultivation of wood attribute techniques will be twice that of an ordinary person. What would normally take 100 years to master, he only needed 50 years. Chen Mobai's current spiritual roots are metal 23, wood 27, water 30, fire 17, earth 10. Taking his current highest water attribute spiritual root as an example, if he were to cultivate the black water technique, and apply the formula of spiritual root theory, his efficiency in refining spiritual energy would only be 1.3 times that of an ordinary person. Of course, the efficiency of cultivation depends on the concentration of spiritual energy, the cultivator's mindset, and whether there are auxiliary spiritual objects, etc. So it cannot be generalized, even under the most ideal circumstances. Given Chen Mobai's talent, it would take at least half a year for him to break through to the 6th level of Kai refining, using the 5 elements technique. However, the Water Mansion is a mid-grade second-tier spiritual land, with a spiritual energy concentration 5 or 6 times that of a high-grade first-tier land. The efficiency of cultivation here is like a rocket compared to being at school or at home. Even so, due to the limitations of his spiritual root, according to Chen Mobai's previous calculations, he would still need 100 days, close to the college entrance examination, before he could barely break through to the 6th level of Kai refining. This was before I watched the video of Master Kingping's lecture. As expected of a nascent soul master, even when explaining the most basic 5 elements technique, and before rambling on about a lot of irrelevant things, once he got to the core content of the technique, Chen Mobai instantly had a moment of enlightenment. It turns out that when spiritual energy flows through this meridian, it rotates counterclockwise 7 times within the acupoint, which can easily clear the blockage. When absorbing spiritual energy through the mouth and nose, one needs to repeatedly move back and forth through the 12 sections of the throat. This allows impurities in the external spiritual energy to be trapped by the 12 sections, preventing them from entering the body's meridians. This process continues until the end of the exercise, when the breath is expelled from the throat. For example, when the spiritual energy is refined and flows into the dantian, it can be introduced in strands in a clockwise direction. Because right-hand rotation is clockwise, and clockwise is associated with progress, it can help condense spiritual energy. Since foundation building involves transforming spiritual energy into a liquid state, taking this step earlier can increase the success rate of foundation building by 10%. Similarly, leftward rotation is reverse, which is dispersal. When spiritual energy flows through some blocked and narrow meridians, it cannot force its way through. It needs to disperse and transform into a thin and soft energy to advance slowly. After finishing his training, Chen Mobai watched the videos of the 1st and 2nd levels of the 5 elements Kai refining technique again, and realized how superficial his understanding of this basic technique had been. As it was almost morning, he reluctantly turned off his phone. However, during his practice that night, he used the offline download function to download all 28 videos of Master Kingping, explaining the 5 elements technique to his phone. This offline download function is a privilege reserved for users at the 3rd level or above in the auxiliary cultivation stage. Chen Mobai is currently a 5th level user, so it's no problem for him. But just in case, he turned off his mobile data when he went to class today to avoid being contacted by the mobile network operator that assists in cultivation. Did you know that Yan Bingxuan dropped out of school? In the morning, before the teacher even came in, Chen Mobai's deskmate Lu Hengsheng sneaked up to him and couldn't keep it a secret any longer, blurting out the bombshell news. Wait, why? The college entrance exam is just around the corner. Is she going to drop out of school because she can't handle the blow of losing to Song Zheng? It's very likely. She's usually aloof, and she couldn't bear the loss this time, so she simply dropped out of school. That shouldn't be the case. It's not like she's never lost before. Maybe he's using dropping out of school as an excuse to secretly study at home. The 2 beautiful girls sitting at the front of the table also joined in, and the girls at the back table weren't going to be left out either. In an instant, a gossip circle formed around Chen Mobai and Lu Hengsheng. Chen Mobai could only roll his eyes. He would have participated in the gossip in the past, but now that he was in his senior year of high school, it was a time when he needed to work hard, and he was too lazy to waste time on gossip. He wanted to make a name for himself and soar to great heights. Just then, Yan Bingxuan walked in, and the gossip circle instantly fell silent. A cold gaze swept over him. Chen Mobai felt innocent, as he hadn't participated in the discussion at all. But the beautiful Yan only gave him a cold look for 2 seconds before returning to her seat, silently packing her things, slinging her blue backpack over her shoulder and leaving the classroom. The classroom was silent for about 10 seconds, and then everyone started talking loudly and whispering to each other. The classmates who were initially skeptical of Lu Hengsheng's news couldn't help but cast surprised glances at them, causing Chen Mobai's deskmate to puff out his chest with a smug look on his face. Clicking, Chen Mobai stood up, dragging his chair across the floor with a loud thud. "Where are you going? Class is about to start." Lu Hengsheng asked a question that seemed odd. "I forgot my textbook. I'll go to the library to borrow one." After Chen Mobai finished speaking, he avoided the even more outrageous gossip and speculation that followed. There was no way around it. The person behind him had already imagined a love-hate relationship between the two geniuses, Song Zheng and Yan Bingxuan, which could easily be made into a 20-episode TV series. He simply couldn't listen to it anymore. He happened to be planning to borrow a textbook on the 5 elements technique from the library, so he decided to slip away. The 5th high school of the immortal sect has a small library with a collection of about 3,000 books. It contains some commonly used biographies and historical records, books about the local customs and culture of Danxia City, as well as some minor spellbooks, cultivation manuals, elixirs, artifacts, formations, and so on that can be studied on your own. Although the highest grade is only first-class superior, the basic content in all aspects is complete. If a diligent and hardworking person reads and comprehends all the books in this library, then obtaining a first-class array master, alchemist, or treasure appraiser professional certificate will be a piece of cake. Unfortunately, this library is practically deserted. What era are we living in? Who still reads paper books? Only those who forget their textbooks will come here to borrow them for half a day using their student cards, and then return them after school. If Chen Mobai hadn't wanted to spend 10 points to download the electronic version of the 5 elements technique from the Immortal Sect National Electronic Library, he wouldn't have come to this library to borrow it. He benefited greatly from listening to Master Kingping's lecture yesterday, but when reviewing the previous content, he found that it had become somewhat vague. He felt it was necessary to review the original 5 elements Gong textbook and the video content again. 1 copy of the 5 elements technique, debited to your student card, free for 1 month. The librarian was a teacher wearing round-framed glasses. She skillfully took Chen Mobai's student card and swiped it. Just as Chen Mobai thanked them and left, someone suddenly walked in through the library entrance. End of this chapter. Chapter 22, Mysterious Ice Technique. Chapter 22, The Mysterious Ice Technique. With long flowing hair and a cool, aloof expression, it was Yan Bingxuan. She was carrying a backpack and holding a book. When she walked in, she bumped into Chen Mobai. She tilted her head slightly, seemingly quite surprised. "I forgot my textbook. Can I borrow it here?" After hearing this, Yan Bingxuan looked at the 5 elements technique book in his hand, her clear eyes narrowing slightly, full of doubt. Wasn't this basic training method already fully taught in the first year of high school? Yan Bingxuan didn't seem interested in probing Chen Mobai's words. She raised her fair, rounded chin, nodded gently in response, and then stepped past him to the female teacher in charge of book borrowing and returning registration. "Hello, I'm here to return a book." As soon as she finished speaking, Chen Mobai turned his head and saw the book she had returned. The frost condensation technique. It was mentioned by Old Man Ding that it's a technique that can transform a spiritual root into an ice spiritual root. You finally decided to return it. You've had this book borrowed for almost a year now. The female teacher with round-framed glasses seemed to know Yan Bingxuan. After receiving the frost condensation technique, she said something with a hint of teasing. Yan Bingxuan rarely showed a smile, which was as gentle as a spring breeze. Chen Mobai, who had only seen the beautiful Yan Bingxuan with a cold face in the past year, was amazed. "When I heard you dropped out of school, I assumed you had succeeded. Now that you've come to return the books, I'm even more certain." While returning the books, the female teacher said something seemingly unintentionally that made Chen Mobai's heart flutter. He vaguely felt that he knew the real reason why Yan Bingxuan dropped out of school. "Yes, I can already feel the frost, so I can say that I have cultivated an ice spirit root. But I still don't have enough attribute points, and it will take a lot of time to improve." Yan Bingxuan is usually a very quiet person, but this female teacher with round-framed glasses seemed to know her very well, and smiled as she talked about her progress in cultivation. If it were you, you would definitely succeed. Thanks. Unlike her usual aloof demeanor in class, Yan Bingxuan was incredibly gentle and graceful at this moment, making Chen Mobai realize the charm of this classmate for the first time. It must have been hard on you, having to act so aloof in order to match your ice spirit root. It's quite nice, very quiet. So she was just pretending all along. Just as Chen Mobai was thinking this, the female teacher had already completed the return procedures for frost condensation technique and handed Yan Bingxuan's student ID to her. No need, but the latter only glanced at it longingly, then shook his head and turned to leave. Yan Bingxuan walked to the door and saw Chen Mobai standing there. Their eyes met, and after hesitating for a moment, she nodded, which was a way of saying goodbye to their brief friendship as classmates. They weren't in the same class in their first and second years of high school. They were only assigned to the same class when they were divided into different majors in their final year. It was a kind of fate, neither too big nor too small. Once you reach the 7th level of Kai refining, you can give up cultivating the 5 elements technique and switch to other cultivation methods that suit your spiritual root attribute. What did you choose? Chen Mobai suddenly asked a question. After learning about the method for enhancing spiritual roots from Old Man Ding, he also searched for information about it online. He learned that although the method for enhancing spiritual roots is also a method, it is more like a spell. Cultivators need to practice diligently for a long time, and sometimes they may not see any improvement in their spiritual root attribute points even after a month. Many pioneers would have cultivators find a cultivation method that matched their spiritual roots, so that their cultivation level wouldn't fall too far behind, and the cultivation method could complement the spiritual root enhancement technique, achieving the best of both worlds. Mystic Ice Technique. Yan Bingxuan answered subconsciously, and then realized why she had answered. See you again someday. After hearing her answer, Chen Mobai's desire to give her the black water technique faded. He had originally thought that the icy breath and ice techniques within would be of some value to her, and he wanted to establish a good relationship with her. The mysterious ice technique is clearly designed for those with ice spirit roots. He was just being delusional. Watching Yan Bingxuan's departing figure, Chen Mobai turned back. Can I borrow this book? The female teacher with round-framed glasses was about to put the frost condensation method on the bookshelf when she heard Chen Mobai's voice. She hesitated and pointed to the book in her hand. This one. These are books from Section A. Students need a note from their main subject teacher to borrow them. Upon hearing this, Chen Mobai nodded slightly, recalling what Old Man Ding had said. Although there were quite a few techniques for enhancing spiritual roots to prevent students with weak self-control from becoming addicted and wasting precious time building a foundation, they were generally only allowed to access this knowledge after entering university. I understand, thank you, teacher. The female teacher with round-framed glasses had a good impression of the very polite Chen Mobai. She thought he had feelings for Yan Bingxuan and wanted to find common ground with her. In order to prevent Chen Mobai from wasting his cultivation time, she specially gave him a hint. Bingxuan's Greytant is a foundation establishment perfection true cultivator of the Natural Academy. It is said that she is about to attempt core formation. This stage is uncertain and life or death is uncertain, so she plans to cultivate a successor before core formation. She is one of the candidates. If the frost condensation technique is successful and the ice spirit root is condensed, then she will most likely be the one. After hearing the female teacher's words, Chen Mobai was stunned for a moment, and then realized that she had misunderstood. However, he knew that she meant well and was advising him that he was still young and should focus on cultivating immortality. If he succeeded in establishing his foundation, he would have more than 100 years to pursue it slowly. A foundation establishment perfection. You probably can't find one like that in the entire Danxia city. Although the immortal sects have a well-established lineage and are a civilization of cultivation, they cannot avoid the clustering effect. Cultivators with the talent to advance further basically all go to those large cities with high-level spiritual veins. Although Danxia City has 2 major universities and an extremely rare 4th-order fire vein, no one except foundation establishment cultivators who have reached the limit of their cultivation will stay here for a long time. This is especially true for cultivators who have completed the foundation establishment stage and are on the verge of forming their core. Although our city does not have any cultivators who have reached the foundation establishment stage, we do have 2 golden core cultivators. Hearing Chen Mobai's sigh, the female teacher, a native of Danxia, couldn't help but say something. Indeed, some of the 72 blessed lands of the immortal sects don't even have a golden core cultivator presiding over them. However, Danxia City has 2 such individuals, each presiding over a different academy. One is the Crimson Robe Immortal, who has returned to his roots in glory, while the other is the Shiking Immortal, who uses the fire veins of Danxia City to refine magical artifacts. If only I could hear a lecture by a golden core cultivator, maybe I would have the confidence to try to break through to the foundation establishment stage. The female teacher was also at the peak of the 9th level of Kai refining, but she had never dared to attempt foundation establishment. If a golden core cultivator told her that she could successfully establish her foundation, she might be able to use that momentum to break through. But the golden elixir true person is of such high status that he can be said to be the god of Danxia City, let alone a mere high school teacher like her. Even students from the 2 universities might not have the opportunity to meet her. Just then the school bell rang. Chen Mobai immediately took his leave and rushed back to the classroom with the 5 elements technique. He put on his wireless earphones and opened the 5 elements kung fu lecture video that he had downloaded offline last night. To avoid being seen by his deskmate, he also turned off his phone, which was disconnected from the network, and hid it under his textbook. Master Kingping's slightly rambling words rang in his ears, and Chen Mobai made a precise swipe on the screen without any visual input. Fast forward, end of this chapter. Chapter 23, Kai Refining Level 6. Inside the water palace, Chen Mobai sat upright on a futon. The light representing the 5 elements appeared on his face, flashing by one, and finally turning into a deep earthy yellow color. This signifies that the 5 elements technique has completed one cycle, then turned into a platinum color, and then metal generates water. The 5 elements generate each other and continuously rotate. After 9 major cycles, a bead of sweat appeared on Chen Mobai's forehead. After a month of cultivation, nourished by the 2nd-tier spiritual energy of the water mansion, his 5 elements technique finally reached the peak of the 5th level. When the time is right, you must make a breakthrough in one go. This was said by Master Kingping. Chen Mobai now regards the words of this nascent soul master as gospel. Without any hesitation, feeling that he was on the verge of success, he swallowed the purple fire pill that was in his mouth. Although this kind of breakthrough pill is only 20–30% effective in breaking through to the 6th level of Kai refining, it is the best that Chen Mobai can buy. There are countless kinds of elixirs and spiritual waters in the immortal sects, but those that can help cultivators break through realm barriers are always the most sought after. Ordinary pharmacies don't sell this kind of pill at all. Even if they do, it might only increase the success rate by 0.5% or 10%. For ordinary cultivators who want to buy good items, the only hope is to rely on the pills released periodically by the official flagship stores of large pharmaceutical companies or immortal sects, which are basically all of the highest quality. Purple fire pill is one of them. After the pill entered the stomach, the sugar coating on the surface was instantly dissolved by spiritual energy, and then a gentle yang energy spread out, instantly spreading throughout the whole body. Chen Mobai's 5 elements technique, which had been operating at its peak, suddenly seemed to be given a push, and he suddenly advanced to the 6th level. But this does not mean that he has succeeded in breaking through. Breaking through a realm is easy, but maintaining a stable realm after breaking through and not falling back is the most important thing. A faint purple aura appeared between his brows. The purple aura rose slightly, like fireworks, but it looked like it would be extinguished in the next moment. This means the medicinal effects are starting to wear off, and the 5 elements' great circulation has only been partially completed. If the entire cycle cannot be completed, it indicates that this breakthrough has failed. But Chen Mobai was not in a hurry. He calmed himself down and placed his hand on a spirit stone beside him. Although it was his first time refining spirit stones, he had already thoroughly researched the relevant information on the cultivation software, and was familiar with the key points and taboos. With the help of the spirit stone, Chen Mobai's cultivation level, which was about to decline, stabilized again, and he even completed a great cycle of Kai with great ease. Kai refining level 6 achieved. Opening his eyes, Chen Mobai couldn't help but burst into laughter, his usually calm face breaking into a wide grin. His hard work over the past month has not been in vain. Of course, although there were many factors that enabled him to break through to the 6th level of Kai refining, he knew that the greatest credit for breaking through within a month was the lecture videos of Master Kingping. The powerful beings at the nascent soul stage, with their superior understanding, provided an incredibly thorough explanation of the 5 elements technique in the Kai refining chapter. For the past month, Chen Mobai spent his days watching his videos at school and his nights applying what he learned at the water mansion. With the spiritual energy of this second-tier treasure land, as well as the assistance of the purple fire pill and spirit stones, he felt that if he couldn't break through, he would really be a fool. Should we consider changing our cultivation method? After a brief moment of excitement, Chen Mobai quickly calmed down and returned to reality. The immortal sects have a rule that any cultivator must practice the 5 elements technique when they begin their Kai refining journey. Upon reaching the 7th level of Kai refining, they can choose to continue practicing the 5 elements technique or switch to another cultivation method. The 5 elements technique has both obvious advantages and disadvantages. For cultivators with average spiritual roots, it allows them to cultivate at a decent speed, but their combat ability is average. However, the 5 elements technique's adaptive spiritual energy allows it to be seamlessly converted into any type of technique. Chen Mobai's mother, Tang Pengqi, cultivates the 5 elements technique. For many years, she has been stuck at the 6th level of Kai refining, but she has a very good attitude. Chen Mobai's father, Chen Xinglin, switched to the melting fire technique, which he learned at his own expense at the Crimson Cloud Academy. He is currently at the 8th level of Kai refining and works in a workshop of a magic weapon factory. The company provides free dormitories with first-grade high-level spiritual energy to its employees, and to save money, he lives at the company most of the time. The Immortal Sect's National Library has artificial spirits. As long as you input your spiritual root attributes, it will automatically match the most suitable cultivation techniques and Taoist books. You only need 1 point to try this feature. Chen Mobai had tried it before when he was bored, and the result from the artificial spirit was the 5 elements technique, which made his face turn pale on the spot. This means that, although he has a true spiritual root, he is basically no different from someone with a pseudo-spiritual root. But things are different now. Thinking of this, Chen Mobai opened his phone and opened the app for the Immortal Gate National Library, but he soon discovered that his phone had no signal. I almost forgot. Only the Cultivation Assistance software, which was distributed by Turtle Treasure, has a signal here in the Water Mansion. Chen Mobai checked the time. Although it was still early, he decided to go back as soon as possible. For a period of time after breaking through with the purple fire pill, one cannot cultivate. One can only nourish the meridians with Kai cultivation techniques. However, Chen Mobai used the pure spiritual energy from the spirit stone for the latter half of his Kai circulation, which seemed to neutralize all the yang fire effects of the pill. He did not feel the same sense of fullness in his meridians as when he broke through to the 5th level of Kai refining. It's as if the 6th level of Kai refining has been completely stabilized without any nurturing. However, just to be on the safe side, Chen Mobai did not continue cultivating today. There's no rush. Even cultivating immortality requires a balance of work and rest. Just as he put away the spirit stone he had drained, a pop-up window suddenly appeared on his phone screen. Enable proxy. After a brief moment of surprise, Chen Mobai remembered how much the lecture videos of Master Kingping had helped him, and just as he was about to click yes, but just as his finger was about to press the button, a sudden flash of inspiration struck him, and he remembered the 5th-tier halo he had gained after being proxied in the Cultivation Assistance software. His face turned pale instantly, his hand trembled, and he was so startled that he immediately clicked no. This is the National Library, the foundation of the Immortal Sect, not some software from a small workshop. Once he becomes a 5th-tier user of this National Library, even if the 3 major halls of the Immortal Sect search the entire earthly star, they would still find him. But Chen Mobai also regrets giving up this agency. He quickly opened the Turtle Treasure app and saw that the agent button was lit up, indicating that it was working, which made him breathe a sigh of relief. How exactly is this feature triggered? Chen Mobai thought of his recent breakthrough to the 6th level of Kai refining. Could it be that each breakthrough would activate this level? But last time it took several days. Is it because this breakthrough was perfect and the realm is stable? End of this chapter. Chapter 20, for Kai replenishing spirit water. Chen Mobai looked conflicted. Without a doubt, if Gibao were to act as his agent for his account at the National Library, it would be far more helpful to him than the second-rate software that assists in cultivation. The immortal sects have a very strict hierarchical system. The higher one's cultivation level, the greater the privileges one can enjoy. The National Library is undoubtedly one of the most core treasures of the immortal sect. It contains 84,000 Taoist books, which are said to be all-encompassing. As long as a cultivator reaches a certain level, they can consult the corresponding cultivation insights, techniques, and Taoist manuals. Even the 7 cultivation techniques passed down by the immortal sects, which can be cultivated to the nascent soul stage, are included. However, only those at the nascent soul stage can view this part of the content. Although Chen Mobai knew that he should only do what he was capable of, he was currently just a minor Kai refining level 6 cultivator. Even if the nascent soul cultivation technique were placed in front of him, he could only look at it and not practice it. But people are naturally curious. If Gui Bao successfully becomes his agent and upgrades his privileges to level 5, wouldn't he be able to browse the entire contents of the National Library? Although downloading the full book still requires points, it's a cultivation technique for reaching the nascent soul stage, so even reading the beginning is exciting. However, he still retained some rationality. I felt I needed to come up with a foolproof plan to make sure the immortal sect wouldn't trace it back to me before taking over as an agent. Chen Mobai opened his user interface at the National Library. His account name was a line of ancient poetry that he thought was very cool when he was young. If I become the Green Emperor in the future. Looking back now, it's still a bit childish, but since only he knows it, he's been too lazy to change it over the years. There's a small checkmark next to the account name, indicating that it has passed real name authentication. If this account were to upgrade to a Tier 5 user, the immortal sect could reach his doorstep that very night. It's best to hold off for now. After calming down, Chen Mobai got up, packed his things, and prepared to leave the water mansion. Today's successful breakthrough to the 6th level of Kai refining is already a great joy, but we must not be greedy and let joy turn to sorrow. He packed up the foil box that had previously contained the purple fire pill, the spirit stones that had been dried out and turned grayish-white, as well as his beverage bottles and snack bags, intending to take them home and sort them in the trash. With my backpack on, I was about to press the return to base button on my phone when I suddenly saw the 3 side holes that had been closed all along. These days he's so engrossed in cultivation that he's almost forgotten there are 3 side halls in the water mansion. Leaving aside the 2 side halls sealed by lightning magic, we can now try to break the water wave restriction formation. Go buy some more green arrow talismans and break it in the next couple of days. Chen Mobai muttered to himself and then disappeared in a flash of silver light. At school, the teacher was lecturing, while Chen Mobai and most of the other students were doing their own thing. In the cultivation of immortals, realm is the most important thing. After all, the higher one's cultivation level, the longer one's lifespan. This knowledge can be learned later when one's cultivation hits a bottleneck. The teachers knew this, so they ignored it and continued lecturing. Generally speaking, there are only 2 types of cultivators who become teachers. One is those who are too old and have no hope of reaching the foundation establishment stage, such as Ding Jinglu. Another reason is to take the opportunity of teaching to re-experience the 4 arts of alchemy, weapon crafting, and formation, and incidentally earn some merit. For example, their homeroom teacher, Chai Dayan, is stuck in a bottleneck in his cultivation, while the formation teacher, Chan Si, has taken on a teaching assignment at Danju Academy. She herself is also learning formations and is using the teaching opportunity to further solidify her foundation. Chen Mobai is shopping online. The green arrow talisman he bought last time worked very well, so he placed a new order from the same shop. Now that he had the money, he bought 10 tickets in one go to ensure everything went smoothly. Although half the money in his card was gone, he didn't feel bad about it. After all, these good deeds were all earned without any investment. I bought 2 more wooden armor talismans. It feels so good to spend money. Chen Mobai was incredibly lucky, managing to snag 2 bottles of Kai-replenishing spiritual water that had just been released by Jumeng Dao Academy. The water was of mid-grade first rank, which could quickly replenish the cultivation level after breaking through a realm. For example, Chen Mobai has just broken through to the 6th level of Kai refining. If he were to absorb spiritual energy and cultivate the 5 elements technique, it would take him about 2 years to perfect the 6th level of Kai refining and attempt to break through to the later stage of Kai refining. However, taking Kai-boosting water can quickly shorten this process. According to the instructions of the pill formula, taking 1 bottle and cultivating in a place with abundant spiritual energy will make 1 day's work equivalent to 10 days' worth of work. In other words, if Chen Mobai takes this Kai-replenishing spiritual water every day, he can shorten the 2-year time frame to 70 days and reach the 6th level of Kai cultivation. Many so-called child prodigies are nurtured by this Kai-replenishing water. However, there are both advantages and disadvantages. First of all, it's not cheap. A bottle costs 200 merits. Secondly, taking this Kai-replenishing spiritual water shortens cultivation time, making the foundation unstable. The time required to break through the bottleneck is far longer than that of cultivators who improve step by step. The bottleneck of a minor realm is manageable, but if it's the foundation establishment stage and the foundation is weak, failure is almost guaranteed. Chen Mobai hadn't originally thought of buying this, but after breaking through to the 6th level of Kai refining, he felt that if he worked hard, he might have a chance to advance to the 7th level of Kai refining before the college entrance examination. The late stage of Kai refining is completely different. It basically guarantees entry into the top 10 academies. Even if the foundation is a bit weak, it can be remedied in the future. Master Kingping once said that spiritual attainment is the most important thing. This nascent soul cultivator has engaged in over 300 battles since beginning his cultivation and has never been defeated, relying solely on his high cultivation level. When he was at the foundation establishment stage, he fought against Kai refining cultivators. When he was at the golden core stage, he defeated foundation establishment cultivators. And after reaching the nascent soul stage, he only attacked golden core true persons and never clashed with cultivators of the same realm. Chen Mobai felt that what Master Kingping said made a lot of sense. In that battle at the Water Mansion, if he hadn't been at the mid-stage of Kai refining, while the old man was only at the 3rd level of Kai refining, he probably wouldn't have been able to win. Therefore, raising one's level of understanding is still the most important thing. That's why he bought the Kai-replenishing water. He was lucky. This was a best-selling product that would sell out within a minute of being listed, and each account was limited to 5 bottles. If Chen Mobai hadn't been browsing the official flagship store of Jumeng Academy and happened to catch it, he might not have been able to snag one. It's a pity I'm short of money, otherwise I could have bought all 5 bottles. Even if I didn't use them myself, I could have earned a little over 100 merits by reselling them. Just as Chen Mobai was feeling regretful, he heard the bell ring for the end of get out of class. In the school's training room, this time he didn't watch Master Kingping's 5 Elements Technique lecture videos again. Instead, he looked for videos on breaking restrictions. Relying on his high access level, he found more than 300 methods to break restrictions similar to the water wave composite restriction. End of this chapter. Chapter 25, Heavenly River Realm. Besides the videos, there are over 1,000 articles boasting that their methods for circumventing restrictions are the best. Chen Mobai set up a filter, first for authors whose level is nascent soul. Suddenly, only 2 videos and 6 articles remained. After reading it carefully, he felt dizzy and lightheaded. That's too advanced a concept. What seems like a basic technique for breaking restrictions to a nascent soul cultivator is like a heavenly book to him. Unfortunately, we can only search within the context of the author's Kai refining level. There were just too many, So in the end, I could only choose to read some of the ones with the most views first. Anyway, it would take 2 or 3 days for the green arrow talisman to arrive in his hands. So Chen Mobai slowly began to compare the various methods of breaking the restrictions from different extraordinary people on the auxiliary cultivation software, and choose the ones that suited him best to study. If there were things I really couldn't understand, I would ask Old Man Ding for help. He was always willing to answer any questions I had. By the time Chen Mobai received the talisman and the Kai replenishing water, he was already full of confidence in breaking the restriction. Inside the water palace, he first tested the array flags to ensure that the power of the Azure water array was not connected with the restrictions before activating the Azure Arrow Talisman to break the restrictions. The results proved that his preparations were quite thorough. After the 3 Azure Arrow Talismans struck, the door of the right side hall shattered with a crash. This was because the power of the Azure Arrow Talismans had not yet been exhausted even after the power of the water wave restriction disappeared. Chen Mobai quickly waved the array flag in his hand, using the Azure water array to pick up the broken pieces of the stone gate one by one and pile them up in the open space in front of the hall. Then use a cleaning technique to remove all the dust. Holding the array flag in one hand and the wooden armor talisman in the other, he walked to the doorway that had already been opened. This side hall is very small, and its layout is similar to a study. Apart from a large wooden table measuring 2 meters by 3 meters, the 3 walls are lined with bookshelves filled with scrolls of bamboo slips, books, and silk paper. Chen Mobai flicked 6 glass beads into the side hall, rolling them over every part of the hall to make sure there were no remaining restrictive forces before entering. He walked to the large wooden table, on which lay a stack of white paper, a pen holder with 3 brushes of different sizes hanging on it, and an inkstone with all the ink dried, indicating that it had not been used for a long time. There was another book on the table, with 2 lines of text on the cover. The Bibo Mansion Account Book, the year 6425 of the First Era. The bottom right corner also bears the signature, Liu Lingpei of the 5 Element School. After looking at the desk, Chen Mobai looked around and found that most of the bookshelves were account books. A few were records of local customs and traditions, and there were also some miscellaneous books introducing magic, alchemy, magic weapons, and formations. He even saw black water technique among them. There was a stool inside the large wooden table, and Chen Mobai went over and sat down. He picked up the ledger at the top and opened it. In January, a new batch of 200 jade blood carp fry were purchased from the Liu family, a family of cultivators. 7 silver-edged jade bamboo plants and 2 gold-edged jade bamboo plants were purchased from Green Bamboo Ridge, costing a total of 370 spirit stones. In February, 200 cattas of fish fry feed and 50 bottles of spiritual water for cultivating salam and seal were purchased in Nangxi Market, costing a total of 120 spirit stones. In March, 300 cattas of fish fry and feed were purchased in Nangxi Market. 2 silver-edged salam and seal plants died due to poor cultivation. 5 bottles of spirit water for pest control were also purchased, costing a total of 70 spirit stones. In April, 400 cattas of bait and 20 bottles of spirit water were consumed, costing a total of 80 spirit stones. In May, 1 Solomon seal stalk died. The ledger ended in October, with no income recorded. It seems the person keeping the accounts had something to do at that time and left Bibo Mansion. Chen Mobai got up and walked to the bookshelf on the wall. Checking the dates, he found the account book for the previous year, 6424 of the First Era. Not only that year's account book, but the account books for the next 20 years were all in this row. He took 10 books, returned to the table, and began flipping through them from the beginning. I flipped through the previous 3 years, and finally saw the income. In August of the 6423rd year of the First Era, 50 Azure blood carp grew to the first-grade low-level quality. 30 were offered to the sect, and 20 were sold to the Tianqinlu restaurant in Nangxi Market, earning 200 spirit stones. In September, 70 low-grade Tier 1 Azure blood carp were sold, earning 700 spirit stones. In October, I sold 20 low-grade Tier 1 Azure blood carp and received 200 spirit stones. After reviewing 10 years' worth of account books, Chen Mobai had reason to suspect that the person who kept the books might have embezzled a considerable amount of money. However, it was only then that he realized that the blue carp he had eaten was actually called azure blood carp. The fry were worth 1 spirit stone, and after 3 years of cultivation, they could be sold for 10 spirit stones. He then looked through other books, and finally learned the origin of this water palace. Named Bibo Mansion, it is a branch of the Five Elements sect, a major sect in the eastern wilderness. The Bian Lake where it is located is a second-tier spiritual vein. Every year, raising biksu carp and planting yuzu can also earn some spirit stones. However, as a major sect in the eastern wilderness, the reason why they sent disciples here to establish a separate residence was not mainly to earn spirit stones, but to satisfy the appetites of the upper-level ancestors. These blood carp and bamboo shoots, after being prepared by a master chef, are truly a delicacy. After tasting it once, a golden core cultivator from the Five Elements sect could never forget it. Since the conditions at Bian Lake were suitable for raising fish and growing bamboo, this long-term task was assigned to the sect. A Kai refining stage 9 cultivator named Liu Lingpei accepted this mission in order to accumulate spirit stones to exchange for foundation establishment pills, and has been stationed in this Bibo mansion for 20 years. He worked diligently, buying fish fry and bamboo seeds every year, and even learning the skills of a spirit plant master and beast tamer, all in order to make a name for himself in front of a golden core cultivator. After looking at the books about local customs and traditions on the bookshelf, Chen Mobai finally realized where he had come from. This place is no longer earthly origin star. Instead, it is a cultivation world called Tianhe. No wonder his phone couldn't receive a signal. He also didn't know how far this celestial river realm was from Earth star. Chen Mobai quickly accepted the other world, because the highest level of war in the immortal sects was to create a world. However, at this level of war, the slightest mistake could lead to the destruction of a nation and its entire world. Therefore, after learning that he was in another world of cultivation, he decided to be even more cautious and carefully conceal himself. But then another problem arose. How did he come into this world? What exactly is that tortoise shell? According to the Flying Needle sect manual of the brown-clad youth he had seen before, it should now be the year 6478 of the First Era, while the time in Liu Lingpei's Five Elements sect disciples account book stopped at the year 6425 of the First Era. In other words, Liu Lingpei has been away from this water mansion for more than 50 years. The old man who claimed to be Liu Lingpei's disciple should have known something, but he was already dead. Seeing that it was almost dawn, Chen Mobai took 2 unread books from the bookshelf and prepared to go home first. Just then, a brilliant idea struck him. Wait, since I'm no longer on Earth origin star, I'm not afraid of the immortal sect investigating me. End of this chapter. Chapter 26 Turtle Hermit. Chen Mobai took out his phone and opened Turtle Treasure. Just as he was about to press the raised, lit agent button, he remembered something else. I logged out of Gibao and opened National Library, first logging out of my own account. I don't know if it's okay without an account. Muttering to himself, Chen Mobai pressed the proxy button, and the interface immediately returned to his phone's home screen. Please select proxy software. Why did I directly select assisted cultivation last time? Could it be that when the proxy function is enabled, it will automatically act as a proxy if I am using a certain software, but if I launch it from the Turtle Treasure software, I need to select it manually? Chen Mobai didn't think much of it and clicked on the icon of the National Library app. Then another interface popped up. No account found, unable to act as an agent. Do you want to create a new account? This feature is quite user-friendly. Chen Mobai clicked yes. Then when I was entering my username, I thought for a while, and the first thing that came to mind was, report and peach blossoms bloom together. This, together with his earlier line, if I become the Green Emperor in the future, forms a complete poem. But after thinking about it, I felt there was a possibility of exposure, so I decided against being artistic. Finally, a brilliant idea struck me, and I typed in 2 words, Master Roshi. After the new account is registered, the agent is activated. He saw a cute little turtle appear in the center of the National Library page he had clicked on. After spinning around once, It disappeared into his user avatar in the upper right corner. However, this time it was different from the situation of assisted cultivation. The little turtle struggled to crawl around his head again and again, as if the National Library had a much stronger protective force than assisted cultivation and could not be accomplished overnight. Eventually, his privileges were raised to almost 4 halos. Then he could no longer climb and disappeared. Tier 3 users, that is to say, it represents a golden core true person. Seeing this, Chen Mobai breathed a sigh of relief, but also felt a little disappointed. This tortoise treasure is not omnipotent. It seems there is a power within the immortal sects that can suppress it. However, this is just right. If he were to be upgraded to a 4th-tier user, the immortal sect would definitely be able to find out immediately that there was something wrong with his new identity as Turtle Immortal. After all, in the entire immortal sect, all the nascent soul cultivators are named and have their own identities. The sudden appearance of a mysterious Turtle Immortal is simply too suspicious. Suppressing his thoughts, Chen Mobai excitedly opened the National Library portal, which had already been successfully licensed. The 3rd-tier authority. I don't know how it differs from his previous 1st-tier authority. The interface is the same. He glanced at the user manual, and his eyes lit up after reading just the beginning. For 1st-level users, there is little choice when facing the National Library. They can only choose whichever cultivation method it offers. However, 3rd-level users have a great deal of freedom. As long as you input your ideas, expected goals, and even the resources you have, the artificial spirit of the National Library will take into account various conditions. Compare them with the 84,000 Taoist books in the library, and arrange them according to priority to select 30 cultivation methods for you to choose from. In some respects, 95% of the National Library space is already open to Tier 3 users. After all, for users at the 4th level, who are nascent soul cultivators, the number of useful Taoist books and techniques is very limited. Chen Mobai suppressed his excitement, entered his spiritual root attribute in the input field, and then pressed the search button. 30 martial arts techniques appeared instantly. One line contains 5 parts, making a total of 6 lines. The first and foremost technique is still the 5 elements technique. Chen Mobai clicked to take a look and found that it was the complete version, containing chapters on cultivating to the nascent soul stage. He was about to download it when a pop-up notification appeared. Insufficient points to download. It seems that even the most prestigious users can't get something for free. Tier 3 users can get a 30% discount. But unfortunately, Master Roshi's account is new and has no points at all. However, Chen Mobai did not intend to take full advantage of the situation, so he maintained a balanced mindset, exited the 5 elements technique interface, and continued reading. The Boundless Skill, the Water Flower Sword Manual, the Profound Yin Great Method, the 9 Curves Diagram, the Book of 10,000 Rivers, the Jade Purity Scripture, the Pure Yang Scroll. Each film had a bigger name than the last, and the later ones became increasingly outrageous. The Jade Purity Scripture is the highest teaching of the Taiyuan Academy, and one of only 7 great methods in the immortal sects that can cultivate the primordial spirit. The Pure Yang Scroll is equally impressive. It is the supreme technique of the Pure Yang Academy, and also a technique for cultivating the primordial spirit. However, as Chen Mobai continued reading, he came to understand a principle. All things return to their origin. Although the National Library contains 84,000 Taoist books, most of these books are derived from the 7 Yuan Shen cultivation methods. No matter what kind of spiritual root you have, if you want to achieve the Great Tao, you will eventually have to walk these 7 paths. Chen Mobai is currently a Tier 3 user, so the artificial spirit provides him with at least nascent soul cultivation techniques. Moreover, it assumes that he has a slight potential to cultivate a primordial spirit. Therefore, based on his spiritual root attributes, the Jade Purity Scripture and the Pure Yang Scroll were inserted into the 30 cultivation techniques. Among these, the Jade Purity Scripture can be considered the ultimate version of the 5 elements technique, which does not have high requirements for spiritual root attributes, and is even best when the 5 elements are balanced. However, the Jade Purity Scripture is extremely difficult to cultivate, and it can only be comprehended after one has cultivated to the nascent soul stage. So when Chen Mobai excitedly clicked in, he found that he didn't have enough permissions and could only see the general outline and table of contents. Disheartened, he read through the descriptions of all 30 martial arts techniques one by one, hoping to find the one most suitable for him. Boundless skill is a cultivation technique of the Natural Academy. The magical power cultivated from it is pure and powerful, making one invincible in combat among those of the same realm. However, it requires a huge amount of spiritual energy, and the cultivation speed is slow. The Water Splendor Sword Manual is a sword cultivation method of the Mountain and Sea Academy. It condenses water into swords and forges swords into formations. Once mastered, it can easily defeat many opponents, and it is invincible on water. Just by looking at the introductions, each one seemed more impressive than the last, making Chen Mobai, who suffers from decision-making difficulties, quite hesitant. But he quickly felt relieved. This new Turtle Hermit account has 0 points. He couldn't download any of those 30 martial arts manuals. However, even his main account, Azure Emperor, only has a little over 3,000 points. This means that he has only spent 3,000 merit points since childhood, and nearly 1,000 of them were added a few days ago when he bought Azure Arrow Talismans and Replenishing Spirit Water Online. There's no other way. There really aren't many places where I need to spend money. Chen Mobai clicked on the last volume, Pure Yang Scroll. Although this cultivation method is also a primordial spirit cultivation method, compared to the high threshold of the Jade Purity Scripture, it is progressive, and the advancement path is very clear and straightforward. End of this chapter. Chapter 27, Immortal Technique, Mending the Heavens. From the 1st to the 5th level, the Pure Yang Scroll is divided into 5 chapters, corresponding to the 5 major realms of Kai refining, foundation building, core formation, nascent soul, and spirit transformation. What's even more remarkable is that cultivating the Pure Yang Scroll doesn't require high spiritual root attributes. But there is one hurdle. That means you need to cultivate the corresponding Tao body. This body is called Pure Yang Dharma body. The cultivation of the Pure Yang Dharma body is also divided into levels, namely from 1 Yang to 9 Yang, with 3 Yang as a threshold, and only when it is perfected can it be called Pure Yang. For example, if you want to build a foundation, you must first cultivate the 3 Yang body. However, to form a core, one needs a body with 6 Yang energies. To reach the nascent soul realm, one must first establish the 9 Yang body. Chen Mobai noticed something familiar when he saw this. Isn't the 3 Yang body just the technique old man Ding painstakingly cultivated to enhance his spiritual roots when he was young? No wonder the Pure Yang Academy directly admitted him without examination after he mastered it. Unfortunately, Old Man Ding ultimately failed to establish his foundation. But isn't this 3 Yang body a Tao body? What does it have to do with enhancing spiritual roots? Chen Mobai, filled with doubt, wanted to continue reading, but found that he didn't have enough points. He could only see the outline and table of contents of the Pure Yang Scroll, but not the specific cultivation method of the 3 Yang body. He cursed inwardly, but he had other ideas. I opened the Cultivation Assistance software and entered Pure Yang Dharma body as a search term. As expected, all methods lead to the same goal. More than 200 pages appeared in a flash, indicating that there are quite a few cultivators in the immortal sects who practice the Pure Yang Scroll, and they have so many reference templates. Chen Mobai opened the video at the top of the search results page. It featured a core formation cultivator named Shaya Yang. This Pure Yang Dharma body, although it is a cultivation of the Tao body, is based on the spiritual root. The difficulty of cultivating the Pure Yang Scroll is actually comparable to that of the Jade Purity Scripture. However, after the Yuan Yang ancestor transformed into a deity, he felt that the great Tao was difficult to achieve, so he created the Pure Yang Dharma body cultivation method for the Pure Yang Scroll, which greatly lowered the threshold for cultivation. This Pure Yang Dharma body, from the initial birth of Yang to the sublimation of 9 Yang, requires 27 points of wood attribute spiritual root, 27 points of water attribute spiritual root, and preferably more than 20 points of fire attribute spiritual root. In this way, when it is finally perfected, it can be basically determined that it has 100 points of fire attribute immortal spiritual root. After listening to the explanation from the Shaoyang master, Chen Mobai understood why the three-yang body was also a technique for enhancing spiritual roots. It turns out that the original version of the pure yang scroll has a very high threshold for cultivation. It requires an infant born in a yang year, yang month, yang day, and yang hour with a pure yang constitution to be able to cultivate. Since the immortal sect established its lineage on earthly star, the upper echelons have calculated the birth dates and times, and encouraged the cultivators below to create many offspring, resulting in quite a few individuals with pure yang bodies. One of the most accomplished was Yuan Yang Lao Tzu, who founded the Chenyang Academy. However, he was also a great and virtuous teacher who was devoted to cultivating future generations and immersed himself in the education industry. In order to spread the pure yang lineage to the world and enable most cultivators to practice it, he created the cultivation method of the pure yang body. It is indeed the pure yang dharma body. Ancestor Yuan Yang was born in the Bushan Dao Academy and had personally experienced the power of immortal technique, Bushan, from which he gained inspiration. This immortal technique, mending the heavens, was comprehended by an ancestor of the immortal sect from the heavenly book of the upper realm. Once used, it can reshape the spiritual root attributes of cultivators, which is truly defying the heavens. For example, Chen Mobai's spiritual root attributes before he ate the azure blood carp: metal 23, wood 27, water 23, fire 17, earth 10. The 5 elements' spiritual root attributes add up to exactly 100, which is allocated by heaven and can only be determined by luck. Immortal technique, mending the heavens, allows for the artificial alteration of this allocation. In layman's terms, it means resetting your skill points. If Chen Mobai is subjected to the immortal technique, mending the sky, he can specify a certain attribute and then allocate the remaining 4 attribute points to the selected row. For example, if he likes wood the most, he can wash all the attributes of metal 23, water 23, fire 17, and earth 10 to be attribute-free, and then allocate them all to the wood spirit root, thus directly possessing a perfect wood attribute heavenly spirit root of 100 points. This 100-point spiritual root is also known in the immortal sects as the immortal spiritual root. Such a person has never been born. Only the immortal art of repairing talents can accomplish this. Ancestor Yuan Yang received the baptism of immortal technique, mending the heavens, which reshaped his spiritual root into an immortal spiritual root with 100 points of fire attribute. With the immortal spiritual root combined with the pure yang body, cultivation becomes incredibly fast. Having cultivated his primordial spirit in just 500 years, he is the fastest cultivating nascent soul ancestor in the recorded history of the immortal sects. Unfortunately, only a nascent soul ancestor can use this immortal technique, and it will consume a great deal of vital energy. Therefore, no one has possessed this blessing in the last 1,000 years. Suppressing his excitement, Chen Mobai watched the video of Master Shaoyang explaining the pure yang dharma body, and finally understood why he needed 27 points of wood attribute spiritual root, 27 points of water attribute spiritual root, and preferably more than 20 points of fire attribute spiritual root. The way of heaven is to take from those who have too much and give to those who have too little. The cultivation of this pure yang dharma body involves reducing water and wood to replenish fire. According to the theory of mutual generation of the 5 elements, one can transform one's own water elemental root attribute points into wood elemental root, and then use the wood elemental root to transform into fire elemental root, ultimately achieving an effect similar to immortal technique, mending the heavens. Each stage of yang cultivation depends on the cultivator's talent, comprehension, and resources. At most, it can reduce 3 points of water spiritual root and 3 points of wood spiritual root, but in the end, it can increase 9 points of fire spiritual root through the pure yang secret technique. If one is lucky enough to gain 9 points in the 9 yang sublimation every time, then in the end, even a cultivator without a fire spirit root will have 81 points of heavenly fire spirit root. If you already have 20 points of fire attribute spiritual root, the 2 points will be added together, and your spiritual root will directly soar to 100, upgrading your spiritual root to immortal fire spiritual root. Upon seeing this, Chen Mobai couldn't contain his excitement and glanced at his own spiritual root attribute. His wood spirit root was exactly 27 points, and his water spirit root was originally 23 points, but after eating the azure blood carp, it became 30 points, perfectly meeting the requirements for cultivating the pure yang dharma body. Looking at my own fire elemental root, it's 17 points. That's a bit of a drawback. When the 9 yangs are sublimated, the total will be exactly 98 points, just 2 points short of becoming a celestial spirit root. Chen Mobai had already imagined himself cultivating the pure yang dharma body, achieving divine transformation, sweeping across the world, and becoming a supreme ancestor. Then I watched a few videos on cultivating the 3 yang body, and it was like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me, chilling me to the bone. The fastest cultivator to achieve the 3 yang body was a cultivator named Min Jiang, who spent 12 years. He then spent another 39 years cultivating the 6 yang body, and finally spent another 86 years cultivating the 9 yang body. However, by then his lifespan was insufficient, and he was unable to break through to the nascent soul realm. He eventually died of old age. End of this chapter.